This is Alex here, back in the SCS studio. Wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for tuning in with us. And we're finally here. Had a few little delays, unfortunately, so we apologize for that. It all comes with the brand new studio setup. And well, there's a few little things that we still need to tinker around with. But we're finally here now, we're finally live, and thank you so much for all of your patience. As you know, we're here for the anniversary of the American Truck Simulator stream. For 3 years now as American Truck Simulator, which I think is fantastic. And well, we thought, you know, we just had a big event happening in America for the Super Bowl over the weekend, and we thought, you know, we better not stream on the weekend because then, you know, the Super Bowl wouldn't get that many viewers for the Americans. We think we would, you know, overdo that, so we're glad that we're streaming here on a different day for that. But joining me with me in the studio for today is Pavel Shabor, who is with us, a very friendly and familiar face.
Hello, everybody.
If you'd like to introduce yourself maybe to the people that haven't maybe been in the stream before.
Okay, I'm one of the founding fathers and the director of SCS currently. And I've been here from the very start, so hopefully I can comment about the history and even the future of the game and our games in general.
Wonderful. And we're here in what is kind of like a version 1.0 of our SCS studio. We had a bit of a more temporary setup before and we were experimenting a bit, but we're here in the brand new with a nice new monitor and lots of new lighting, and I'm just wondering, what's all your thoughts about it?
Well, the hardware was very expensive, but we still have to figure out the decorations. This is actually not the final decorations. This is what we normally have somewhere in the studio. We just brought it here to have a backdrop. But this is going to be like decided and figured out too. So for now, we have great 4K cameras that gave us so much trouble 15 minutes ago. We couldn't get the stream up and running. But everything is really just set up today, finally up and running. So hopefully from now on, we'll be able to talk to our audience way more frequently than ever before.
Absolutely, and I'm really, really looking forward to, you know, all the different streams that are going to be coming to us, you know, from now on and in the future. And today, we're very lucky to not only be joined by Pavel here in the studio, who will be also joining us much later on, but also by a couple of other developers as well, who will be speaking about, you know, the history and the current progress and maybe what's even to come for American Truck Simulator. And of course, you, the community, played a massive, massive part in sending out your questions to us via the forum posts, our SCS forums. And you came in and flooded them with loads and loads of interesting questions, which for sure we're going to be answering throughout the whole stream. So thank you very, very much. You played a very big part already in the stream and what's to come of it. So we're very excited to get started. We're very, very excited for all the content and as well as all the things we're going to be discussing. And luckily, we are joined by Pavel for our very first segment of today, and really we want to get stuck right into it with the questions that you've been submitting. And so we wanted to ask very first off, obviously the whole stream is based around American Truck Simulator. What was your reasoning for going into American Truck Simulator? You know, there's many different maybe parts of the world that you could have touched of, but why American Truck Simulator?
Well, we started, when we started on our own, finally with Euro Truck 1, we knew we had great audience here in Europe, but there was always this thinking, should we go back to the roots and should we go back to the American continent? And ultimately, after the release of Euro Truck 2, there was so much like feedback, so many wishes coming our way for us to come back to somehow revisit America, that we thought, okay, how do we do it? It was a very different era than where we are now. We are talking about 5 years ago, when we were just fresh with Euro Truck Simulator 2, a small team, basically about 20 people total, split between the technology, the core of the gameplay, and the content group. And we just couldn't figure out how to do it, we were just starting with Europe, essentially. We just had the Central Europe covered, and the UK. And then we were in the middle of these like priorities. Should we really try and open a new region, or should we stick with Europe? But we thought that there are too many players that we are leaving out. The American Truck Simulator market is comparable in size to Europe. Nowhere else in the world, whether it's Australia or anywhere, we would have that many local customers that we can count on. So it was a safe bet, so to say, that American customers will prefer their own region as compared to driving in, from their point of view, exotic Europe. So we thought, okay, let's try, let's do it. And initially it was really a skunkworks type of operations with just 3 guys. And that obviously wasn't enough. And that even formed some of our early decisions to use a different, more comprised scale, stuff that we were only fixing later on as we discovered that really this game will catch on and does catch on and will require even more bandwidth, more development resources. So it was really a kind of experiment that turned into a real product before we knew it.
Wonderful. So it really was based upon, the audience kind of almost like feedback and demand that you're hearing from a lot of the community already. And would you say you got maybe like a lot of people emailing your inbox or, shouting out on the community social channels for saying, hey, we really want to see America? Was that quite a large demand while you're doing Euro Truck Simulator 2?
Yeah, back then we even had, I guess, different social media channels, not all of what we have today. But the message was clear that for some people, until we give them their own, they will not be happy. And of course, with the scale we chose initially, even with the scale we have today, we knew we would be having to start from somewhere. Our very early truck sim games were doing American continent in just one yearly dev cycle, but the art and the design was so much simpler back then. Then we knew that this is going to be a long road. This is going to be a commitment for many years. So how do we start? Where do we start? What is the most scenic start where we could just chip in? So in the end, we opted for California, and we thought, okay, let's go west to east. And here we are, still basically just starting.
Wonderful. And you were saying earlier on, obviously, you started quite small in terms of people that were working on American Truck Simulator. And really, at what point did you think, wow, this is really going to be a massive project? Did you have to get more people in, or did you take people from the current existing team and kind of add to it, or how did it work team-wise?
Well, in the first year or two of American Trucks project, we still kind of couldn't believe that Euro Truck 2 is going so strong that it can sustain us. We thought, okay, Euro Truck 2 will have its own life cycle and we'll have to replace it with something, perhaps. But then it turned out that it's not just a game for us, it's a kind of platform that we can continue to develop and that we can continue to depend on for financing the company. So basically, Euro Truck 2 bootstrapped American Truck and gave us more and more courage to go in with more bandwidth, with more capacity. So the initial team, that was really just 3 guys at the core, 4 guys as a support, started growing only during the second year of the project. And by the time American Truck was released, we were about, maybe some other guys would remember better, but about 10 people total on American Truck Simulator, which compared to our today's standard is still a tiny team. Right now it's less than what we have on one DLC, but at that point it was everything, all the art, all the trucks, all the AIs, everything was just tiny team. But it was already like full-scale commitment for us. It was at that point, it was about the same number of people on American Truck Simulator as it was on Euro Truck. We had to start with one team and split one guy, then another guy, add in fresh talent, then mix it again and steal another guy from Euro Truck. And ultimately, we were aiming for having balanced team sizes. So right now, American Truck and Euro Truck, the core map design team is about the same, really tiny differences in single percentage numbers. And behind them stands a huge 3D modeling, the asset creation team that has some dedicated people to either project, but at the core, there's a lot of people that are shared between the projects. But when it comes to map design, we had to have focus. We absolutely had to have people who are fully dedicated to one or the other. So really, only during the final year of development, American Truck was boosted up to what we then thought was the full size. But then again, after the release of the game, we got even more resources. We were confirmed when our bet was really confirmed that this is going to catch on. So at that point, we started hiring like crazy up to the current size of the company, which is about 150. So right now, both American Truck as well as Euro Truck have, when it comes to it, about 70 fully dedicated people to them across the different departments. So a huge kind of long road, huge progress, interesting story for us.
Absolutely, yeah. And it sounds like almost if you were back in the Euro Truck team way back then when it started, that maybe they would have been a little bit frustrated that maybe they were losing maybe some of their better developers or designers to go to the American truck team. But obviously you can see from this day that it pays off. All that talent, all those people that you brought in, which is really fantastic. And from what you earlier touched on as well about the rescale, about the sizing, etc. What was the reason for starting off at the scale that you did when we first released American Truck Simulator?
Well, it was all about our anticipation for how big those games can become as not in scale of the map, but in success on the market. We had our expectations much lower than what we ultimately so far have achieved, fortunately. But back then we thought even at 1 to 35, or what was the original scale, we thought getting to the East Coast would be a decade at that manpower and everything. But then we thought, okay, we probably should aim higher. And how do we even squeeze some of the more populated areas on the East Coast on the map in that original ratio? So we knew the sign is already in front of us clear that if we have to change the scale at one point, it had better be sooner than later, because redoing stuff later on would be pretty much impossible. So it was a really painful decision to just release something and then ultimately revisiting it immediately and starting anew. But we knew we have to do it if we want to deliver on the full vision. Also, as it turned out, we kind of underestimated one factor, which is when you shorten the distances, when you more compress the length of the route, the time loop, the day and night cycle has been shortened too. So with that kind of compression, the game turned more into a sleeping simulator where we were always just looking for a place to stop to rest. And we didn't want a game that focuses too much on that particular simulation aspect. We wanted a game that feels more kind of relaxed. So the extended scale up to the level that we already have confirmed from Euro Truck 2 that works for us was actually beneficial in thinking about the same scale and time factor in both games. And also it's going to be in the long run beneficial when the two games meet in World of Trucks. So there were the benefits that were clear. It's just that initially we were quite doubtful that we can cover the whole of the continent in a lifetime. And only given the success of the game and being able to hire more developers was the impulse for us to think bigger and dare bigger.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think making the decision from the very early on, I think maybe a lot of people were confused by that. I think there was a lot of talk in the community whether that was going to cause delays. And would you say that caused any really big setbacks when you made that decision to do that?
Well, definitely the half a year or so that this project took place, it was a very risky delay early on, because instead of us pumping out content, we were just redoing what people already considered done from the initial release. So it was a risk, and also maybe some people even didn't have enough patience to last that long and abandoned us. It's quite possible. So it created a dent in the sales curve, or how to put it in a way. But we persisted, and I think it's going to be worthwhile now and down the road that we can squeeze in more detail and more cities, and most importantly, we'll have enough room in between the cities and the interstates for interesting places to stop, like the rest stops, or even if one intersection, or what's the big name for the American interchange, takes so many square miles in this compressed world. We just have to squeeze them in somehow. So more space means more reality, and how tight we need to make the various intersections and various landmarks. So it's all for the benefit. It's just that initially we didn't have the courage to aim for this bigger scale.
And another big thing that I wanted to touch on, actually, that again coming from the community, is a lot of you probably see it every day. A lot of people talk about trucks, in American Truck Simulator, all the different trucks, people are wanting to see or that we already have in the game. And was Was that really a difficult, well, almost subject to start on, in the sense that, when you thought, right, we're going to do American Truck Simulator, do you think, right, it's going to be a little bit harder to get in touch with the truck industry to see if we can get them inside of our game? Was it different to your Truck Simulator and how you worked with, industry partners there as well?
We knew it would be harder because we're just not at home in the US. We are not considered a home player by the companies there. In Europe, it took us many years with some of the companies. We were talking with them ever since German Truck Simulator through Euro Truck Simulator 1, and it took us 5, 6, 7 years to land some of those licenses. So for American Truck, we knew we would be having a very difficult time. I was flying around the US and making phone calls and bombarding people by mail and anything, even before we started, just to get a feel if we can even hope for somebody. Fortunately, in the middle of development, we finally landed one partner who actually represents 2 of the brands. So that was a lucky moment for us, because we were totally decided and committed to only releasing actually fully licensed vehicles. We didn't want to go any fantasy brand path. We just thought that the level of the models, of the detail, is anyway putting us in a position that we have to do it officially. Otherwise, the companies would just mind and complain and maybe hurt us and hurt the future of the project in ways that we wouldn't even want to do. So we were totally decided that we have to chase somebody down and get the brands. Fortunately, we were able to launch at least with 2 brands. But then we spent close to 3 more years chasing the other people. Somehow we were always close, but not quite there. There was always something that delayed the negotiation or the deal. Now, during the past months of the last year, we finally got some very good traction, and there is something on the horizon that was really finally positive. That's going to be a discussion maybe for another segment of the show today. But really, we were in a difficult situation, because when you have a game you call American Truck Simulator, but you only have a little bit of the continent and just a selection of the brands, it's like making a football game with just 2 stadiums and 2 teams, and the teams are not maybe even from those stadiums. It's like imbalanced, and for many people, unless you give them their home turf, it's not really the game they were expecting. It's not the same as for maybe people from California are okay, but I guess people from Texas are a very different breed, and for them, we are not quite where we need to be, not to speak about East Coast people or Illinois people. So for them, this is still a promise of something that comes a long way in the future. And now all we need to figure out is how to accelerate that future.
Absolutely. And keeping on the subject of trucks, as we can see here, driving along the highway right now, obviously there's been a lot of differences in the way trucks are created for the game. I believe it was the case so that, when you first started off, it was created using just photo files, kind of like from photos, and just kind of basing it off on that. But now we have a newer technology that works maybe even better. Has there been a big difference in the way that trucks are created from, from the very start of where we're seeing here to the present?
Well, the progress is crazy and scary even in some ways. Initially, like in those 10-plus-year-old games that we created early on, we would maybe have 3, 4, 5 photos from the internet you would find on Google, and it was the basis for building a vehicle. So mistakes were made, the simplifications were everywhere. Later on, we managed to grab a vehicle on our own somewhere, maybe parked on a gas station, and quickly snap some photos. Later on, we started borrowing the vehicles for a day or 2 of photo session. So we had a lot of photos that we had to just deal with, but still, the 3D guy, the 3D model guy, just looks at the model in his 3D tool and compares to a photo, and he thinks, okay, this shape is right. Then he turns it 10 degrees and looks at another photo, and finally sees that the shape is not right, because from a different perspective, it's not correct. So later on, we were able to use a piece of software package that combines a ton of photos into a huge kind of 3D representation of the surface of the vehicle. That was kind of 3D scanning kind of thing. Later on, we added actual 3D scanners that we bring to a location and that people kind of use to closely follow the shape of the vehicle. And most recently, fortunately, we were lucky to obtain some CAD files, some really 3D highly detailed plans of the vehicles, especially of the outside surface of the vehicle. It's important for us, also for the shapes of the dashboard and all the in-cabin stuff. So that once again gives us a chance to be even more precise, to make things right on the first attempt, not to have to iterate by fixing earlier incorrect guesses. So the process has been changing a lot, but at the same time, with all the new reference material we have, the quality bar that we expect of ourselves is getting higher and higher. And so as maybe 10 years ago, we would spend a few months on a vehicle at most. Right now, one vehicle of the new quality would typically be too many years plus to get all the base model of it, all the chassis variants, all the cabin variants, all the tuning, aftermarket parts, all the paint jobs. So it gets more and more grueling to get from the start to the finish line with a new vehicle, because a new vehicle is actually a ton of building blocks that make it up together, and they need to all understand each other's limitations. Like when we change an engine, a badge on the door may change, or it affects whether you can or cannot select a particular trim of the interior, or some chrome parts can only come with certain engine variants again. So all that needs to be somehow handled somewhere through data that somebody needs to manage. And it's quite difficult for the artistic-oriented people here, for the designers who purely focus on the art side, to also have this technical part of it like a natural part of the process. So a lot of still learning process is still we need better documentation, we need better tools. That's, I guess everybody always wants more and better. So that's the focus here internally on tools, on methods, on better communication. Everything still needs some improvement.
And it's almost scary to almost look at the future, to what's to come, because obviously technology is changing so much every single day, and it must be, even if you look back just a few years, you know, maybe a lot of things have changed in the way their processes work. And I can imagine that maybe if we did look back maybe a few years, that maybe there were some challenges then that were a lot more difficult than they are now. Do you see a difference in that, where, okay, we look back a few years and, okay, this was actually really difficult, but now it's actually gotten a bit easier because of, you know, a bit newer technology or better tools or whatever it might be?
Well, in many ways, for most studios making games, the most difficult part is just, you know, surviving. And we were through this difficult period for many years, early on in the history of the company. Living from month to month or to year, you always face so many uncertain factors that you have to optimize for the short term often. You have to go and come up with something that will work and move on. As we are now more and more confident, thanks to success of the two games, we can think about many things in the long term, like about AI development or about graphic technologies, about the tools you choose or how you work. So this gives you more kind of relaxed way to approach problems. You don't have to just fight for survival. You can think in the long term. But still, it's actually another kind of stress factor too, because then if you commit to something and spend a year developing a tool, and then you realize, okay, it's maybe we thought wrong and we should have done it differently, then of course you throw away your time anyway. So we don't have this pressure that makes us optimize for the short term, but we are still under stress to do things right. Fortunately, the tools out there are much more mature, all the 3D modeling software. Our approach to data now is better. Our cooperation with companies is getting better year after year. So I think it's a little bit easier, but at the same time, our pace of development hasn't changed that much. Everybody would like, us included, would like to be much faster about it. We add people, we add talent, we train new talent all the time. So it should be visible ultimately. But you know, I understand with people always bombard us, when is this coming and when is that coming, because there's so much that we could do and should do.
Yeah, and obviously we always see a lot of that, but I know that, you know, the team has gotten a lot bigger and things are looking quite bright for the future for SCS Software, and it's really quite exciting to see, you know, you go around the office and you see everyone quite hard at work, and there's always new faces appearing here and there as well. And something you touched on earlier, actually, you said you went to America when you were out talking to different people in the USA. And kind of what did that trip include other as well? Did you get recognized out there by anyone? Did you kind of spot the SCS team, or how did it work out there?
Often it just happens that when we talk to the companies, they say, yeah, we are aware of you. We know that this colleague and his son is playing the game, but we thought we might approach you, but they have always so many other priorities in their marketing or in their communication that they always kind of think that somebody is going to do the work for them. And we try to explain who we are, why it's beneficial to be a part of the game. But it's a lot of work. We now have dedicated personnel to just handle the relations with the industry, and we didn't have that when we were a tiny company. Everybody was doing everything more or less, and then we were starting to specialize. But maybe we should have had more focus on communication early on. But that's what we had. That's all we gave it all what we had and more. We were working crazy hours in the early years of the company, just to survive, just to go on, and just to maybe hopefully at some points even exceed expectations. So right now we just need to continue working maybe smarter than necessarily harder, just to be better at what we are doing.
And while you were out in America, did you actually come back with any research? Did you have people go out there specifically for research? And do you still continue to have people out there, or do you do a different process now?
We had a team visiting the Packard Research Center for a few days to record the engines and take photos. Now we have some sessions more or less agreed upon with European-based American trucks. Some companies here bring US trucks for the show or for showing off, sort of. We have a trip or maybe even two planned for the spring to visit OEMs, or to visit, in some case, it looks like we may be visiting a major truck dealer that is very cooperative and very fond of our game.
Wonderful.
One of the founders. So that may work for us. So these are kind of thoughts that we have, that we need to see the vehicles live. We need to see the details of the finish of the dashboard, or the materials, leather or textile that's on the seats. So CAD files are not enough. You have to interact with the vehicle, understand how it works. You have to record the sound of the engine and everything else, and that preferably you want to do yourself. You don't want somebody else to do it for you without having all the know-how. So we have to get access to the vehicles. That means we have to go back again or get the vehicles in our hands for a few days. So that's still happening and will be happening for foreseeable future.
All right, so very exciting things kind of in the pipeline, in the works of American Truck Simulator. And keeping on that subject, actually, obviously we have a lot of people out there always talking about what's going to be happening with American Truck Simulator, what's the future hold, are we going to see anything new out there? Is there anything you could maybe reveal us, at this time on point, that maybe a couple of things that we're working on? Is there anything happening maybe you could talk about?
Well, I know ahead of this stream today, we said we would hint or even show some things. And I just see the screen here, and I don't know what the guys have ready for showing. I know that we were supposed to not just hint, but maybe even for many people who recognize the shape, confirm one of the vehicles that's in the pipeline, one of the trucks that's in the pipeline for the game. Here I am confirming another truck, and you will see pictures of it, or maybe you are seeing them, I don't know. Or you'll be seeing them only when the following guests appear on the show, and they'll be showing it. So that's something for them. We have obviously just confirmed another state that's coming up, Washington State.
Very exciting.
And there's a lot of work already done on it, and we should be way faster finishing than people may anticipate from the previous years. There's another state very well under production now, so it looks like it may still make it this year out, and we'll have a third state we actually have it in research and pre-production already. So ultimately we should have on American Truck 3 teams working in parallel, pushing as hard as possible. Some of the states that we have obviously on our radar are smaller or less populated. Some of the states are crazy huge. So it's not like the pace will be the same. Always we'll have to look how to space things so that it works for us and for the players. But good things are happening both with the vehicles and the world creation. And of course, there is new stuff, like we are working on rendering improvements. We are working on new Lightning model again. After some years that we changed it, we need to change it again for even better looks. In-game features, World of Truck features, so ton of stuff is happening. There's so many people pouring their heart and their soul into the project. So good things are happening, good things are coming.
And that's really, really exciting to hear. And obviously, we might be talking a little bit more about that later on, as you were saying. I'm sure many of you are excited to hear, a lot of different things that you're hearing about, or even little teasers that we've been seeing here and there. And really, that's what I'm looking forward to about this stream, celebrating 3 years of American Truck Simulator. I'm not sure where the time has gone. It's kind of really just flown out the window, and it's really exciting to see where the project is now, and what exciting things has come. I've seen already a lot of community hype from people talking about Washington, just from the few images that have been put out, and also the teaser trailer. They're saying, wow, I recognize that place. I've actually been there maybe, and it's really, really cool to see the hype. And is that something that you were expecting to see from this state? Were you expecting a lot of people to go, oh wow, it's great, can't wait to see this is really happening?
It's always great to hear from the locals, because they actually create the hype for the non-locals. Of course, if you are from Europe, or if you are from Australia and you just play the game because it's cool, and thank God for these customers, you appreciate anything that's looking good. But the knowing that you hear from somebody else confirming that you are actually driving through a nice scaled replica of the reality, it just makes it stronger. That the feeling of the simulation is much more better if you really feel like this is simulating the actual world. So it's locations, it's the vehicles, it's the behavior of the AI or the vehicles. The better we make it, the better it serves for the purpose of giving people this alternate world to go to and enjoy the world. So it's a part of the commitment now to try to recreate locations. We have to be very selective, of course. If you have 1 to 20 scale or so, actually, if you take a square of it, it's 1 mile per 400 miles of the real world that we just kind of pick and develop and pretend for it to represent all of the whole. But it still works great. I think we achieve really positive response, and people just cheer when they recognize, I've been there, this is the bridge I've been on. So it feels so good to have this kind of feedback.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to see. It's all over the social media channels, and we love it when people share their images and their thoughts with us, because it really gives us that feedback, that we need to hear from them, and that we love hearing. It almost, lifts up the whole team in good spirits, which I think is a fantastic thing to see. And I do want to actually ask you, from an American Truck Simulator point of view, do you have a favorite state that you just absolutely love to drive in personally?
Well, I'm really looking to drive all the way on 101 along the coast. In real life, I've been there, I think twice actually. For the first time, it was like 20 years ago in 1999 or so. We were driving around Sierra Nevada. We went north from Vegas, and then across Tioga Pass. Tioga Pass was recently added to American Truck, and back along the coast. Then when I was in Washington State, I actually did a little trip with the guys along the coast there. So I've seen glimpses of it, and it would be great to have it complete in the game too. So that's the thing that I'm looking forward to.
Wonderful, yeah, no, and it really is a beautiful drive, almost very, very historical, very scenic, love those turns, etc. And another question has come from our community. This is one of our community questions, asking if you can bring any feature to American Truck Simulator with just a click of the finger. Don't have to worry about any of the things that come with it or any of the problems. What feature would it be and why?
Well, from the point of view of being responsible for the health of the project and studio, actually, I would very much love to, give our map designers like 1000% productivity boosts for them to be able to just click away and create the world much faster, because this is crucial for us for the long-term success of the game. So maybe it's not a feature that's oriented on the players, it's a feature that I would love our coders and engineers to come up with for the toolchain. We do a lot to improve the toolchain for the guys. A lot of things are happening in the editor. I guess people who mod the game must have noticed from time to time that a new tool, new gadget is appearing, and we are changing the method of how to apply color on the world, or how to apply texture, detail on the world. More of this is happening to make it more streamlined, make it more simplified. But on its own, the game is a huge collection of individual features. We always have like 100 features on the wish list. And each year we can just say, okay, maybe we'll do 3, 4, 5, 10. But there will be still 90 more left. And by the time we're done, 20 more added on top of the list. So we are picking as we have, somebody's playing with the light. We are trying what we can. But for me, ultimately, it's about coming with stuff faster for the players, to make them happier, to cover the parts of the world that they are crying for, to get them more vehicles. That's what I wish for, rather than any individual simulation feature.
Wonderful, and that'd be a really cool feature to see. And actually, another question coming in from our community here on the screen, asking, what is your top 3 games you've ever played, or that you've played recently? Is there anything that you're really into?
Yeah, I'm an old guy stuck with old genres. So I play games like Civilization. That's my long-term, like, I'm coming back to the game ever since the part 1, which is really like, what 1996 or so. Must have been over 2 decades of me and Civilization.
Classic, though.
Most recently, I've been playing a really cool Czech game called Factorio, which is about some robotic factories and like simulation again, but of a different kind of scale. Most recently, I was playing a game that's called Slay the Spire, which is like combined card game with some kind of, what's the name? Kind of survive until you die and you start again. So I'm playing not many action games that I would play. My kids play games, of course, and they always play some multiplayer shooting something. But I'm kind of a calm gamer. I prefer a relaxed experience where I can manipulate the world as I like it, but not feeling too much pressure coming and ruining my easy evening.
Yeah, just something to kind of chill out on, and just to relax with. And I'm exactly the same as well. I'm a bit more of a Zen gamer. I just like, just enjoying a little bit of time in front of the screen just to myself. And I think Civilization is a great game, actually. It's really kind of told the time. It's just kind of timeless, really, in a sense. You can just, even though it's so old, you can play it, continue today, and it still works just as fine and actually plays out just as fine. And a few more questions actually coming from our community here. Is asking, is there going to be an anniversary skin? It's such a momentous occasion of 3 years. Is there going to be anything special maybe we can see from that?
I'm afraid we didn't think about it. We should think about it for the future. We kind of slowed down on the skins, on the paint jobs for the vehicles. Initially we thought, okay, this is easy to create, or so we thought in the early years of a Euro truck and then American truck. But then the more you have, and any truck you add, you have this commitment of coming back and recreating those 200 paint jobs, not just for the standard cabin, but for the extended one and the taller one, and with the extra bumpers or whatever that may be plastic, but maybe paint or maybe paintbrush. So it's a kind of boulder on our shoulders now that we have to always revisit all the paint jobs. And when you create a new design, you have to apply it to all the different trucks and again, all the different variants. So we have slowed down a little bit. We still want to give people what they wish for. Like when we add a new region now, there will be more paint sets for Euro truck. When we add some new content for American truck, we will be figuring out how to do more cool stuff for people. But it's not like we are really keeping things in check so that we don't overstretch ourselves on paint jobs, and then are sorry for dedicating too much of our ongoing maintenance capacity just on keeping them supported properly through the changes in the game. The thing is, the projects both keep changing. We are adding new features to vehicles. We are changing the way they behave. Over the years, people must have noticed that we added configurable steering wheel, or mirrors initially were not also configurable, now they are. And all this means that we have to revisit the model of the vehicle, cut it to more pieces, make them more independent of each other. This affects what you do or don't do with the paint jobs. So paint jobs are cool, but only to some extent.
Fair enough. So maybe it'll be one for a bigger milestone, like 5 years or 10 years, possibly. But obviously, a lot of people working on more higher priority things at this time and bigger projects, which I'm sure everyone can probably be okay with a little bit. I know there's a few out there we probably would have been like to seen it, but yeah, obviously. There's lots of going.
Yeah, maybe we should have thought about it, but actually did not, because we are so much into so many sub projects on American Truck that nobody thought, okay, this a new paint job is a priority.
No, it's a fantastic idea, and of course, if you do want to get your ideas into us, there's always a suggestion box on our forums. You can actually head over there at forum.scssoft.com, I believe it is, and there's not only a range of topics there, but also one where you can put in your suggestions and ideas for both ETS and ATS as well. And some more questions coming in from the community here. Someone asking here, is there any aerospace transport like for hauling rockets to launch sites? So they're asking maybe if there's going to be some space rockets that we can transport to different launch sites, maybe SpaceX sort of thing, or Tesla or something.
I think this was bounced around quite a few times, that it would be cool to transport the booster or something to a new location. We may do it. We were thinking about one location in California way back. People love to transport cool stuff. You can transport standard stuff, but why not, stay with it if you can do something cool? So we are always figuring out how to put more cargo, but this new cargo also means new facilities and new believable facilities that give you some more of a long-term gameplay opportunity. If you only do one booster transport in whole of the time you ever spent with the game, maybe that focus and development capacity should have been devoted to something that will serve you every day as you play the game. So I think this was not yet prioritized, but it may become another spice in the mix down the road, as we will be looking for more and more cargoes. Right now, I believe the American Truck team is more and more focused on actually creating industrial chains that would make sense, that you start with the raw material and go through some facilities and processes that make it into a more and more refined product, ultimately with the consumer product being delivered somewhere. So this is the goal from our initial, early on in both Euro Truck and American Truck, all this kind of random, totally chaotic transport of various goods across different locations into more believable chains of transportation.
Right.
And really there, space ship part transport is really the tip of the iceberg, and we need to do the bottom of the pyramid first.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think as cool as it'll be all to see, I think I completely agree with you with that. There's a lot more things, and hopefully a lot more things in the pipeline that we're seeing that will come for the future. That will be, in my opinion, even more cooler than a space rocket in a sense. More questions coming from our community here. We're just going to got time for a couple more. Will American Truck Simulator receive cabin accessories like Euro Truck Simulator 2 does?
If I remember correctly, there were two factors that kind of slowed us down in the decision. The first was that supposedly the law enforcement in the U.S., state troopers or whoever can check on you, are even more harsh on drivers having some junk on their windshield or around the cabin than they are in Europe. Even in Europe, we have kind of borderline legality of all the stuff we squeeze it into the cabins. But we see a lot of these trucks here on the roads of Europe, so we are more confident about putting it in. In the US, we get a lot of feedback from our early questions. If it's even legal, if it wouldn't be promoting something that's totally illegal. And we were slowed down in that decision. And furthermore, actually, it turns out that most dashboards on American trucks don't have much space for you to put stuff on. Maybe you have it somewhere on the seat next to you, but unlike European trucks where there's a lot of kind of trays and a lot of spaces where to put stuff, we didn't figure out how to do enough mug to put somewhere or a toy on the American truck dashboards. So all we dared to do was some hanging stuff, we have these Christmas little trees that we had in the previous event, but we didn't still figure out how to approach the stuff that you can put somewhere, sitting around. We want to revisit with the discussion, or we want to get smarter about it, and maybe we'll dare to do something. it's not about us not being willing to do it. It's about us getting kind of scared that if we do it, somebody will accuse us of promoting something that's seen too harshly by law enforcement, really, so far.
Right. Yeah. And well, I think those plushies are really cool as it is anyway to have those hanging toys. They can be a little bit distracting at times, obviously swinging about, but there you go.
But
that's
maybe this is really a topic for some heated discussion on our forums, where
Absolutely.
people can put the arguments why it's a good idea and how to do it, because in many ways we are depending on people from the field, from real experience, giving us inspiration and giving us feedback on the ideas. So there may be somebody arguing well for it, or somebody explaining the risks or workarounds for how to do it and survive. So that would be a cool opportunity for people to help us in this decision process, in this planning process.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, head over to the forums. You know, you have your suggestions and wish lists there, as well as our social media channels. You can always tweet us and or put a Facebook comment down on one of our articles as well. We're always looking out for them and looking out for what you think is best for your feedback, etc. JD Farmer 32 asking, will the new LA tunnel be added in game? I'm not sure if that's in reference to maybe the Boring Company tunnel or another big underground tunnel they're going to be adding. In
I know that the Boring
area.
Company tunnel is kind of short and maybe
Yeah.
only for passenger cars, but maybe, of course, all the huge cities are improving their infrastructure. So if the early rendering of ours of Los Angeles is now about 4 years old, things must have changed since then. Some new projects were completed in the real world. So it's not like we are abandoning our older DLCs forever. We still keep revisiting them. And especially when it comes to the oldest, the California region, we still have this plan to revisit all the horizontal road signs, markings, because they are kind of naive way of how we understood them 4 or 5 years ago. Now we are smarter when we do the new DLCs with hopefully more realistic road signs and markings. So there is a reason for us to revisit the older regions, including LA, and maybe the team will find the capacity to also reattach and replug all these interstates and then roads and highways into a more up-to-date system. But I cannot really comment on promise or anything, commit to it. I just know that we are always revisiting old stuff, always aiming for us to upgrade it to the better processes that we are introducing over time.
Okay. And one very, very quick question asking, what is your favorite state that has been made for American Truck Simulator? Of course, you touched on, obviously, your favorite drive of your road, but do you have a favorite state that exists right now?
Well, I would say that the newer, the better, the more proud the team is about depicting the world, the reality with their rendition. So I would say that the youngest child, Oregon, is currently my favorite, but before then it would be New Mexico. And actually I'm way more looking even for the upcoming stuff. So as I already know the new stuff, I can claim that my love is shifting towards the newest stuff that's not yet released. I think the best part of it is actually that the whole of it makes way more sense than the individual pieces. So the more states we have, the more playing field you have, the more enjoyment you have. You can pick shorter distance deliveries, you can go really long and get lost for 2 hours and really go through some day and night cycles and experience the long distance haul. So for me, actually, the whole of it is more valuable in many senses of the word than any individual state. That's why we need to push for further acceleration of the design and the build up the world somewhat faster. This year, finally, we'll be seeing the results of our growth. This year, finally, we should have at least 2 DLC for the map, and hopefully in the following years we'll only get better about it.
Looking forward to it. And I have to agree with you. I love the long drives. And I think there's been quite a few people getting in touch with our Twitter. I'm not sure if you've seen it yourself, saying how they've been able to go from one really right corner right up to the very top corner and do these really, really long drives. And I think that's the best way to experience American Truck Simulator. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for with Pavel. Thank you so much for joining us. But he will be back a little bit later on to answer more of your questions, but not before we have a couple more of our team who will be joining us, answering more of your questions that you've submitted through the forms, the things that you really want to know about, as well as the fantastic history of American Truck Simulator that we are celebrating 3 years on. So again, congratulations on 3 years of American Truck Simulator.
And thanks to everybody playing the game and buying the game, because that's how this became a real thing. It's without you, we wouldn't be where we are now. So thanks for your support. Thanks for spending the time with us now. And I'll be back.
Yes,
Alex
absolutely.
has a long evening ahead of him. I can rest for a bit, and we'll be back with another segment of the show in a few minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll see you again in about 5 minutes' time. Do not go anywhere. Lots more to come, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Bye for now.
And welcome back, folks. Thank you for enjoying through that little bit of break. I hope you enjoyed a bit of a water break as much as we did. We're back here in the brand new SCS studio. We just talked to Pavel Shavor a little bit earlier, but now we're joined by another guest here in the studio. Fantastic to have you along. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
That's good. That's wonderful. If you'd like to introduce yourself maybe to the community.
Okay, hi, I'm Andrzej, and I'm the lead map designer on ATS.
Wonderful. And maybe we could start a little bit with the back history of where you started with American Truck Simulator, or maybe even your history here at SCS.
Yeah, my history here at SCS. I joined SCS more than 5 years ago, in the end of 2013. And first year and a half, or till the release of the Scandinavia DLC, I was part of the ATS team.
Okay, wonderful. And so you've had your hands in quite a few different projects around the team already. That's fantastic to hear. And actually, speaking of really quickly before we delve into some questions from the community, right now I believe Steam have just started their Lunar New Year sale. So we have quite a few products from SCS Software that's on sale right now on Steam. If some of you don't see it just yet, just wait for your Steam just to update a little bit. I know they can be sometimes a little bit slow on it. So there are a range of products from American Truck Simulator, including a very special bundle that's now on sale for the Lunar New Year. And of course, if you're celebrating, very happy New Year to you all out there as well. We'll get started here on some questions that we've actually got coming in from the community. We've had a lot of people asking about American Truck Simulator. Of course, a very momentous occasion, 3 years. Not sure where the time has gone. It's just gone really quickly.
Yeah, it feels like eternity, since the release of the ATS.
Absolutely. Yeah. And talking about obviously your previous work here in SCS and also on American Truck Simulator, at that time, was there anything that you learned from your previous work projects that maybe helped you in tackling American Truck Simulator as a brand new project? Because obviously it was quite a big thing to tackle.
Yeah, it was a big thing, and I was learning on the go. I was threw into the water and just said swim. So, but yeah, for first year and a half, or how much long time I've spent on the Scandinavia DLC, it was a great school. I learned every basics of the editor, how the game works, how to manage the project, I guess. But the ATS, it was a different beast, because I got my own team, and I had to learn how to cooperate with people more closely, how to arrange meetings, make compromises. It wasn't just simple, do this road, do this city. It was like planning ahead and managing other people. So that was different.
Absolutely. So it was almost like going out of your comfort box, would you say?
Yeah.
And
I've never been aspiring to be a leader or to be a project manager, but I ended up there.
And what would you say was maybe some things that were very different to what you were quite used to at the time when you started American Truck Simulator?
Well, everything, the scale of the project, the size of the team or of the whole company, the tools available. When the changes are incremental, you tend to not notice them, but in the retrospective, each year there were huge changes in the technology and everything. The tools advanced, and we were able to create much more interesting stuff.
Okay, and so what would you say maybe were some of the biggest challenges that you faced maybe at the start of American Truck Simulator? Was anything that you thought, oh, this is a bit tough actually?
Biggest challenge is tackling the whole project, because it was a great unknown, and actually the ATS project, it was running parallel with ETS before I joined it, but only a few people, 3-4 guys were working on it, and I guess it wasn't progressing fast enough. So after the end of Scandinavia, I was reassigned, and my job was to put the project in shape and release it as early as possible. And it was a great unknown, like, yeah, do your best. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try.
So it was a little bit scary at the time.
Yeah,
would you say?
yeah, of
Absolutely.
course.
It can obviously be quite nerve-wracking, you know, to have that moment of, oh gosh, this is such a big project, as you're saying, the great unknown of, you know, where do we even begin? Like, to get even your head into that correct mindset of starting must have been a bit mind-boggling for you. And how many people were with you at that time, you know, when you started as a team?
How many people? Oh, I don't remember, but I think there was something like 5 of us, or something like that. So some people left, and some people were reassigned from ATS. And it was a really small team early on. And that was kind of a problem, because when we were trying to finalize the game, to release it, I think it's one of the question, the final polishing stage. We didn't have enough manpower, and we had to ask for help from the European team to help us fix some bugs and to polish stuff. It was quite hectic.
Yeah, so it was all very much hands-on, very much hands-on. Wow, it would have been, I imagine, a lot of hustle-bustle happening in the office at that time. And we actually have a question that really maybe kind of ties in at this time, asking, what do you like maybe most on your job? What do you not like on your job? Is your job a kind of stereotype?
Well, what I like is actually the variety, because I think I'm still learning. There are still new opportunities to try new stuff and to progress as an employee. So that's the nice thing. Also, the map design work. I think it's kind of interesting and varied. You're never doing the same thing twice. I think that the asset guys are maybe have it worse than us, because they are like modeling trees or modeling houses, and we are still just making a landscape or some junction or some city. But everything is kind of unique. So the stereotype might settle in a little bit, but it's not that bad.
Okay, no, and I think I've definitely seen it within the community. A lot of people are quite interested in, you know, about what you do, like in map terms and designing. Obviously, some people might think it's just placing assets on a map and that's that. But maybe could you go into a little bit more depth on maybe what sort of things you actually get yourself stuck into in terms of what you do on a daily basis?
Well, that's a huge topic. Our name of our position, it's map designers. So we are mainly designers. So you have to design stuff first. You have to have good design skills, but also good planning and communication skills, because you are cooperating with other teams. Basic thing is that programmers are providing the tools, and the asset guys are providing the art assets, the building blocks, the building pieces, and you are using the programmers' tools. And with the building blocks, you are making the world. And that's about it. But it's not just someone's going to tell you, place that tree there and place that house there. You have to have your own design skills to know what looks good. And it's also like every design work, you have to make lots of compromises, because every day is like constant problem solving, and you have to balance the visual quality, performance, realism, and the limitations of tools you are working with.
And I think that really just gives almost like a small piece of the pie, in the sense of how much really does happen within the team every day. Like you said, it's a huge job, and really like a lot of appreciation and respect goes out to your guys, because obviously there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And speaking of maybe more of recent projects, maybe delving a little bit into New Mexico. You worked a little bit on New Mexico, is that correct?
It was our first project. Our team, or my team, because there was part of the people who were working on the project on earlier, but the team I started the ATS with, this was our first DLC from scratch. Like parts of the Arizona and Nevada, they were already built when we joined the project,
Okay.
and this was like the first big thing where we had to prove ourselves that this is our work from scratch. So yeah, it was big.
Absolutely. And so, what do you think was maybe the hardest thing about creating? It's because it's quite a unique state in the sense that a lot of people think, oh, it's just just desert, but there's actually a lot of things that build up New Mexico as a whole as a state. And obviously, there would have been a lot of referencing happening as well, and a lot of cooperation with research teams and etc. like that. Maybe what are some of the steps?
I haven't
in
had
creating
research team back then.
Oh, you didn't even have one, so you're working
we
yourself.
had to do it ourselves. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what were some of the the things that you were having to do with research then?
Yeah, we have to spend a lot of time on the internet and on the Google Maps and just looking at stuff and finding what is typical and what is possible to recreate with our technology. And yeah, it was lots of information gathering and then filtering the important stuff and making design decisions, what to put in game and what to leave out. And yeah, of course, the desert was the hardest part because there were long view distances,
Yep.
and our view distance in game is kind of limited. So it was hard to create the feeling of the wide open space with the limited view distance, and also. It's always easier to make some interesting place with lots of details. You just put lots of details in, but it's really hard to make something plain interesting. Some grassy desert and what to do with it, how to make it interesting, because in engine it will always look a little bit worse than in reality. So you have to focus on the detail and find nuances to make everything interesting.
Absolutely, and actually leads perfectly on to the next question, talking about how you were keeping things unique. And in the New Mexico teaser when it first came out, there was lots of little different things happening with like motion capture and as well as humans being modeled, as well as aliens as well, because that's kind of the whole thing behind the state. I heard maybe somewhere that maybe it was one of your colleagues. I think we even have footage here about what was happening.
Yeah. It was time of great experiments with motion capture. Yeah, and we didn't have dedicated actors, so our colleagues were helping to capture the motion capture footage.
And it looks really, really unique. And for people that don't know, I think this is actually set up with using different cameras from the Kinect system.
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
correct?
I guess so. It was really punk back then.
Yeah, but I mean, as we can see from today's games and from New Mexico, that the models really did make it into the game, and we see the animations in there and all sorts of little fun things that people can really capture, as you're saying, the detail from it. So when they are driving by, they do, for example, we'll see Chenda here who's doing some video motion, that you'll see them in there, working hard.
That's the teaser. It was first time we tried to make something different, because before I think it might sound bad, but we didn't have the manpower to take the marketing seriously. Mm-hmm. So our teasers and trailers were all kind of similar, and for New Mexico we tried to make some new thing, and I think we succeeded.
Yeah, and this is actually the teaser now we're seeing on screen. I believe that they brought out, and it's a really, really unique teaser. Actually, I really like the idea of it, because a lot of the time when you're in the desert, you see these massive rocks, and to put these different inscriptions on the rocks is a really cool idea. There with the alien from the motion capture there, trying not to be spotted by the trucker. Really, really something that brings a uniqueness just to that state alone, and that's something that I absolutely love from these map expansions, is that each one has their own unique touch on them. And people might think, oh, that's gonna be a really a bit more of a dull state because it's just desert, but in reality there's so much to see and do when you really, really look into detail. And actually, maybe skipping forward a couple of questions, with those details, sometimes I believe there's some little hidden Easter eggs around the place on the map, maybe. Is there, can you confirm any of those, or are they controlled? Do you allow them? What's the deal with those?
Yeah, my designers are creative people, so and they like pop culture and all this stuff, and everybody loves some joke or references. So like USA, it's the state of the pop culture. They are the main producer of the mainstream movies.
Yep.
So everybody knows them. So when you are recreating some city where some famous band originated from, or where some movie took place, you've got lots of opportunities to hide some reference or something like that. We cannot place just anything in our game, so we have some control processes. So some map designer with maybe darker sense of humor or anything doesn't put anything too dangerous there.
Yep.
But yeah, we are trying to insert fun here and there.
Absolutely. And is there any maybe favourite ones that you have, or would you rather people go out there and find them for themselves?
Favorite ones? I don't want to be biased about these, which I put in. But I think still the best is one of from the early Nevada. It's not some concrete reference, but the peking rubber ducky.
I've seen those,
in
yeah.
Nevada, it's just fun.
Really would be unexpected for a trucker to be driving and they see those. And I remember
Yeah.
seeing those all over Twitter, people going, oh my gosh, there's these huge rubber ducks
Yeah.
in the game, which I think is really fantastic. Again, add some really nice little unique things for truckers to go out and explore, kind of almost gets them to go, actually, I do want to go out of the way. I want to go out and explore and try find these little things. And I encourage that. I imagine you encourage that as well.
I like exploring in games, so this is like, yeah, my thing.
Absolutely. And with obviously these things that come into the map, we're talking about the details, we're talking about the Easter eggs and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, it's not always easy. Obviously, you're saying how designers can be very creative with the things they want to put in, but obviously sometimes there can be a little bit of a limit with optimization. Is that something that you find tough to do when you're creating maps?
Of course, as I said, the creation process is all about solving problems and making compromises.
Mm-hmm.
So you are still like trying the best with the performance limitations of the computers. So everybody could put lots of stuff in game and make it look nice, but not everyone will be able to do that with the limited tool set and limited horsepower of the computer. So yeah, it's constant.
Of course, yeah. And really, what do you think is the one of the biggest things? Sorry, wasn't expecting that to happen. We're talking about the past of American Truck Simulator. Obviously, we talked a little bit with Pavel about how tools have changed, times have changed a bit, technology's come so far. Was it very, very different back then to how it is now in terms of how you're using your tools and how your different ways have changed, or is it still very much how it was from the start?
It's hard to tell, but I think it's really different. Like the tools are now much more advanced, like the new brush tools of coloring terrain, and new terrain tools. Right now we can make much more complex shapes. Yeah, working with the terrains, like 5 years ago, we had like length presets, so we were able to do terrains of just certain lengths, like 4 meters, 60 meters, 32 meters. So it was hard to make some custom stuff because the terrains were going through itself and it was glitching. Right now we can precisely place it on millimeters, and the whole content browser, and because back then we had a few hundred models, and everything could be stored in mind, and you just remembered how the model is called and how does it look like. So you were just searching through the text and placing items in world. With content browser, with thumbnails and everything, it's totally different because right now we have thousands of assets, and it wouldn't be manageable to remember them and to search in them. So yeah, lots of things happen. Custom AI lines, everything is more site-specific and more custom-made and more realistic. Our aim is still towards the realism.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and so you must be like very quite happy almost in a sense that these tools have made it that little bit easier, maybe a bit more precise. Maybe you can, I don't know if a few people maybe have like a little bit of OCD now, they can happily, you know, precisely paste that one cone or wherever they wanted to put it.
Yeah. The thing is, programmers usually prepare these tools for us in hope that we will make stuff faster, but it usually isn't like that. We usually make the things prettier and more realistic.
You may take your time a bit to make it look even better than it actually is, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like honestly, like from looking from the maps, even from New Mexico and other maps as well, we can really see that pays off in some sense. And
yeah, we certainly hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there really like maybe a big memorable moment that you've had, or something that you're just like, I'm really proud of this specific part of a map that you can maybe share with the community?
I don't know. I think every release of the DLC is the big moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of the worst and the best moment, because right before the release you are stressed, you are full of uncertainty. Because still on back of your mind there's gonna be some huge bug which testers haven't find out, and yeah, after the game is released and it will get nice reviews and you see people playing it on YouTube, it's the best moment. So yeah, it's something like that.
So really the community play almost like a very big part in, almost shaping how a map works, or like when you receive feedback from afterwards, do you see a lot of people trying to reach out and contact you on the forums or something like that to see if something can be changed, or is that something that you like to see, or sometimes can be a little bit a bit frustrating at times?
It depends. The feedback is great. We always like feedback, be it positive or negative, because we try to learn from our mistakes. Mm-hmm. It just has to be civil and not rude. So like, we demand thing and we demand the other thing. It's not working, but constructive critique is always appreciated.
Absolutely, and actually coming in from our community here from the chat, coming in from, I don't know how to really pronounce that in a proper way, so I'm just going to say SGPCH, saying it's not a question, but just wants to thank you for your wonderful work. With all your map design there, which
thank you, SGPCH.
Which again, no idea how to pronounce, but we're really thankful for your comments, and we love seeing your questions. Our wonderful team behind the scenes are looking out for them there as well at the same time. Going on to another question, actually, do you have a favourite state of yours currently to drive through? We talked a little bit about Pavel's, but do you yourself have one?
It's always the last state, because it's the most advanced one, usually the most pretty. So yeah, I like the whole map. I think even in the older parts there are some pretty places. And yeah, but usually the last one is my favorite, because it looks the best, and we are sure it's in the top quality compared to the others.
Absolutely, and I think Oregon does a fantastic job of that, and that's a really, really diverse landscape of mountains and all sorts of different places, and even any state that you're looking back on, you can really see the little progressions here and there, a bit more detail, and it is really, really great to see. I can appreciate the details. I'm a man that enjoys the more little things in life and just taking it slow down the highway, and I'm sure the community can appreciate that as well. And actually, speaking on the terms of driving, do you personally have a favorite truck? I know some people find it quite difficult not to to have a favorite truck or anything.
Yeah, it's hard. I tend to not focus on that stuff, but maybe the old Kenworth is my favorite, because I like the look of the hood.
Wonderful, yeah, very old school, and it's a great looking truck as well. And we also asked Pavel this earlier, and we're asking everyone throughout the chat today, do you have top 3 games that are your favorites right now that you love to play or you've played recently?
Whoa, that's always tough question.
It is, absolutely. Lots of games.
I think I've got somehow rose-tinted glasses, so if I would say about top all the time, it would be like old classics. so I'm not going to mention them. But from recent memory, as a level designer, I appreciate the game with good level design. I tend to focus on environments. And from recent memory, the last Zelda was really great.
Yep.
Also, right now I'm playing God of War. It's also a gorgeous game,
Absolutely.
environment-wise. And I think the logic puzzler, The Witness, it was one of my favorite games that year. So yeah, there are 3 games from the recent memory.
All right, so quite a wide variety of games.
Yeah, I play everything. So.
That's fantastic. That's really cool. And would you say, when you're playing these games sometimes, do you sometimes almost grab inspiration from them?
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to watch some talks from GDC and to read some books about level design and game design. So, and also when I'm playing, you are broken. I'm constantly analyzing stuff and finding out some design tricks and spatial solutions and how the designer was leading the player and this kind of stuff. So yeah, I try to take inspiration.
All right, well, that's really, really cool to see that, that even the games that you play just at home on your personal basis, you're always thinking about the process of it, and always takes up a lot of the inspiration here, which is fantastic, just to even hear. And actually, keeping on the subjects of mapping, actually, someone's actually asking about, we touched on it a little bit earlier, about the rescale. Obviously, that might have been quite a tough time for the map designers to kind of tackle that project, but they're asking, when did the idea come? How long did it take to, to rescale that? Was it quite obviously it would be quite a daunting thing to be like, almost like having to add all that again.
Yeah, it's quite complex topic. I don't know if I'm able to break it down totally, but the main idea was that the primary or the original focus of the ATS, it was more like a side project of the test, and the goal was to have the whole America finished as fast as possible. So the really small scale was chosen, and after the release, we found out that our ambitions are much larger, and we wouldn't be able to fit everything in. So the idea of rescale were discussed. It was really tough. We were analyzing it back and forth, and on one hand was we're gonna have much more space to put some stuff in. On the other hand, yeah, but the whole USA is gonna take like forever to make. We're gonna never finish it. So yeah, it was tough, but the final decision was to listen to the players and make the world larger or with different scale.
Yeah, and so it almost sounds like we have a product in the UK, actually, maybe a few of our viewers know about it. It's called Marmite. It was almost like a you love it or you hate it kind of love-hate relationship with it, where you saw, the good and bad of both sides. So I imagine, there's quite a lot of thought process and meetings and all sorts of, issues that went through into it. And I imagine you could probably talk about it for hours if we had the time for that.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time.
And actually, a few more questions coming in. This interesting question that we've actually asked before as well is that if you could bring any feature or part to ATS just by a push of a button or a click of a finger, which one would you like to add into the game? What would you like to see?
That's a hard question. I don't know if the feature should be like feature for players or a feature for us map designers to make our life easier, to make the maps quicker. I don't know. It's so hard. The list of the wanted features is really long. I don't want to make anyone angry. Maybe I would like to customize my own garage or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to have some money sink to get rid of the money and yeah, have some more agency on the world.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, hey, that's a feature actually a lot of people I've seen talk about, and I know a lot of people have been tossing the idea back and forth about garages as we speak here. There's one right here in American Truck Simulator, and well, hopefully we may see more futures about that in the future. Obviously, a lot of people would like to talk about that, but as we previously discussed before, lots of things already in the pipework, a lot of work going on. I can imagine it's a very, very busy time for you, you know, more than ever with American Truck Simulator. And speaking of, some people actually, again, looking back from the past with some of the work, Technology with Pro asking, will you guys improve the Sacramento metropolitan area in a future update? So they're asking maybe, you know, are you looking back at old places, or what's your kind of process with looking back on the older states?
Yeah, the main idea is we know our sins of the past, of the older road topology mistakes or city design mistakes. But the thing is, the content is already there, so we don't want to, and the players are living with it, and the new content is new content, and it's better than to reskin or recreate the older content, because if you use the one person's time to recreate the old stuff, you are just replacing stuff. If you are creating new stuff, you have the old, flawed stuff still in, but it's at least something, and you create something totally different. So time-wise and content-wise, it's better. But that doesn't mean that we don't look at the old stuff. Currently, we have one secret project going on, and the old map is usually playground for the newcomers to the team. So we, I think players can look forward to some improvements even in this next update, and even in next updates there are going to be some topology changes and fixing of mistakes. So when somebody has, some map designer has some ambitions, or we try to evaluate someone during the evaluation period, they are usually improving some stuff in the base map.
All right, so there's still thought about a little bit there. You know, there are some times where you do go back and look at it, and obviously some more things in the pipeline. But obviously, again, very, very busy, lots of different projects ongoing within there. So, you know, things to look out for in the future on our blog posts. You know, you can always keep up to date with the latest on our social medias, as well as our blog, blog.scssoft.com. I believe Facebook one, facebook.com/AmericanTruckSimulator.scs, and facebook.com/EuroTruckSimulator2. So obviously keep up to date with all the latest stuff there. There's always going to be new stuff coming out, and I think more than ever before, we're almost posting weekly updates on different things that are happening for this year. As we're touching on cities and states there as well, Big Sean 80340 asking, how do you guys go by choosing what cities to incorporate in the states?
It's again compromise. So we try to gather as much data as we can. So we are trying to gather some economic data, some demographic data. So of course we are choosing the biggest cities, but not just the biggest cities, but cities with the most important industries or places that make sense for us in game. Second condition is our map topology, because usually the agglomerations and the big cities more on the west coast are like clumped together, and the other places of the state are much less denser. So in the end, there might be some paradox that some bigger city is not there because there's just not enough place to put it in, and other side of the states where we will put just some small settlement with I don't know, 15,000 people there, but it makes sense topology-wise, because we have to have like constant unlocking progress in
Mhm.
our map. So when the player is starting on different parts of map, he is able to progress through the map. So we cannot leave some blank spaces just because there are just small cities.
Absolutely. So it must be quite a bit of a tough decision sometimes when you have a state that has so many different, large cities or even smaller, hubs that have so many diverse people and communities and backgrounds. It must be quite tough to almost choose which ones are going to work best for the game. It must be a bit of a fight between, but I want to see this, now I want to see this. It can be a little bit difficult.
It's usually like, these are like 15 large cities and they are just clumped together, and if you will pick one from the three and you have to discard the others, or just make them just like only some view, some surroundings, so it's not a gameplay city. Yeah,
well, thank you for sharing that. And for anyone that's been quite familiar with driving in Euro Truck Simulator 2, especially in the France DLC, Amazing ATS is asking about, is SCS going to have toll roads in the future? Because I know a lot of people in ETS and Euro Truck always getting hit by those toll roads, but obviously there's quite a few toll roads that are included in real life in America as well.
Yeah.
So do you think we could see those in the future?
I think certainly in the future, when we are gonna have space for them, and we will come to states where they are used more densely. I think we can look forward to them. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Another great question coming from Jago Coyote, asking how you are going to do all the different types of roads, because obviously, America doesn't just consist of huge highways and massive streets, but there's also lots and lots of different street types that exist. I think from one of the teasers we've seen, or from previous actual maps as well, there's little dirt roads that you can go down and explore and etc. like that. Is that a bit of a challenge, or how do you pick that up?
Is. We try, or we want to keep the things diverse. So if we were just focused on the most important roads and with the scale limitation, we would have only interstates and highways and nothing more. But we like to make things more diverse and interesting, so we are trying to incorporate the smaller roads, the forest roads, roads to the farmlands and this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of different roads, I think some of the guys behind the scenes here are saying that they can show some gameplay or farming gameplay from Washington. If we might be able to bring that up onto the screen, which would be quite interesting to see actually. A little bit of exclusive if we haven't seen it.
I think it's going to be really interesting because we are again aiming to better realism. So we are taking a whole different approach to creating the farms. They're going to be much more unique and they will look a lot better. So again, also players can look forward to them because it's going to be another new thing in Washington also.
Yeah, I think the viewers are actually seeing it on the screen right now. We're not in the studio, unfortunately.
It's not a farm.
But they are seeing it backstage. So I see lots of pop chats happening on Twitch chat. A lot of people getting excited about it. I love seeing those. Lots of people obviously quite excited for that. It's really cool gameplay footage to see. I wish I could have seen it, but I imagine it was quite amazing. Hey, there we go.
Hopefully.
So another question coming in from Papolis, saying, in the Washington DLC, will there or can we see more places to deliver and pick up jobs similar to the Boeing plant? Quite a unique place to pick up trailers from, with the aircraft.
There are going to be unique places. I wouldn't talk about specifics, but there are going to be unique pickup places, just like in previous DLCs.
I was going to say, because looking back on previous DLCs, obviously we saw some really cool, different animations within the map that existed and really unique pickup points. And would you say that mainly came from your your team side of things? When you come up with these ideas of creating different new places? to
It's
find?
always a collaborative idea. Somebody comes with the initial idea, and we're gonna discuss it. It's usually really narrow collaboration with the assets team. So it's not like one person's responsibility or I forgot the word. I can't remember how to say it.
That's okay.
No,
Go on, that's fine. That happens. That's okay. And maybe we could delve a little bit into talking a bit more about your roles, maybe to get some of the community, maybe they're a little bit interested about map designing and maybe the things that happen there. Is there anything, maybe some advice you could offer? Maybe places if people are aspiring to maybe even look into that position or role, what sort of advice would you offer to them on getting started on these things?
I think the map design work is same as any other design work. You have to think about stuff. It's not just about placing things randomly. Everything has to have some purpose, even if the purpose is it's just decoration or this kind of stuff. So when you are creating a virtual landscape or virtual highway or virtual city, it has to have purpose. Nothing could be placed randomly because it would break the immersion. So yeah, think about the stuff. Be curious about how things work. Why is what where? Because the hardest part when we are creating the landscapes is that in real life there was a landscape. People came into it. And they were looking for the closest and the simplest ways from the point A to point B. And the simplest way wasn't over the big hill or through the tunnel or across the river. So that's why the roads are winding and going around stuff, not always in the straight line. And in our game, there is nothing. There is no terrain, and the basic thing in the beginning is the road, and you are making the scenery for the road. But you have to still have on mind that in real life the order is the other way. So you have to try to avoid making unrealistic stuff like. Some stream on top of the hill or a road going through the tunnel through the single hill in the plane, because that thing wouldn't happen in real life.
All right, so there's really is quite a lot of brainstorming that goes into it, a lot of communication, a lot of thinking, more so than just, like you said, getting A to B. There's a lot more to it to really think about, I guess, from the player's perspective, almost in a sense. You've got to think how a player, would see it and enjoy it as a driver. And I guess it can almost feel like a bit of a pressure because, there's so many people looking and going, right, they've announced this state. I expect it to be just like it, just perfect. I can almost, I can't imagine what that sort of pressure would feel like. But I imagine there's lots of also good times to your job as well. Obviously, lots of things to enjoy here at SCS Software. Yeah. Do you have any favorite parts of your job or things that you just like, I really enjoy doing this in particular or working on this?
Favorite thing? I think we have meetings where we show each other stuff we are the most proud of. So it's always nice to see nice things. So yeah, the best thing is when you see that your talented colleague has made something really awesome, and you can appreciate it, and yeah, it lifts the spirit of the team. Like, yeah, we can make it work.
Wonderful. I'm not sure if we have any other couple of questions that are coming in from the community. We have time for just a couple more coming in through the chat here. I think we've got one that's just coming in now once it appears on the screen in front of us. Big Sean again getting in contact with us, saying this is really, really cool to hear SCS Software, really enjoying the chat.
Thank you.
He's being a bit cheeky, asking, maybe when can we expect Washington? Is there any hints to that? I'm not sure if we can say anything just yet, but
I think the main information is that players can accept 2 DLCs this year, so we wouldn't release them one next to another. So I think that's a hint.
Okay, wonderful. And I got Game 18i asking, in Seattle they have a new tunnel in real life. Will that be in the game? Looking at long time.
Again, I would leave this as a surprise.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because obviously, you know, there's lots of new things popping up around different cities. I think I mentioned earlier with Pavel about, you know, we're talking about Elon Musk's what's it called, the boring tunnel that they're building under the city, and they're really quite unique. But obviously, like you said, we'll have to really look out for that in the future. And another great question coming in here, just one of our last ones I think we have time for, asking, for what state is Duff looking forward to working on? His personal opinion.
I don't know. Every state is a challenge, and I don't have any favorite. It's not more what I'm looking for, but what I'm afraid the most is the whole East Coast, because the density of the road network and the cities and agglomerations. I really, right now, I don't know how we are going to tackle that. So yeah, that's what I'm curious about, how it's going to work out.
Absolutely.
Because we will have to cut lots of corners, and it's always hard to moderate the players' expectations, because everyone would like to have his favorite city in there, and I think we're going to have to cut lots and lots of corners. So
yeah,
it's going to be hard.
There's a huge, you know, amount of roads and cities and networks to tackle. You know, you just look in that upper corner on the East Coast, and it must be like, oh no, like how are we even?
It's going to be just one big city.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, you know, a bit of time to think about that for the future. But unfortunately, that is all time that we have with yourself in the studio. Again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to kind of peek into the world of American Truck Simulator and how far it's come, and obviously celebrating 3 years now. I don't know where the time has gone again, but obviously some fantastic work that's come from not only yourself, but the teams and all the people that have come from behind the project from the very start.
It's all about teamwork. It's not just the map guys, but the asset guys and the programmers and everybody in the company.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, no, really well done. Thank you again for joining us. And well, that's not all. There's still lots of exciting things to come. We're going to be speaking to one more person from the American Truck Simulator team before we go back to Pavel with more of your questions. Again, this stream has been littered with your questions from the forums, and we've been taking them, and it's really made for some interesting conversations. So if you're going to be sticking around with us, there's lots more to come. Maybe a few surprises along the way, maybe a few little key giveaways as well. But for sure, would love to have you to stick around with us. We'll be back again in about 5 minutes' time with another guest here in the SCS studio. We'll see you again very, very soon.
Okay, thank you, bye.
Mother's
25
made a
years
name.
old. Yeah. I live very far away from here. I'm from Tokyo, as you can tell. 10 seconds. Do the cameras light up now?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, thank you and welcome back. It's great to have you back here in the SCS studio where we're celebrating 3 years of American Truck Simulator, the anniversary. That time's just, again, it's just gone. Thank you very much for bearing with us through that little bit of break. We got a little bit of water, got ourselves set up here. And we're also, as you can tell, joined by none other than, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jakub. You probably remember me from the last stream that I was here before. Was it before Christmas or after Christmas?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I work as a senior map designer and nowadays also as a map DLC lead on the American Truck Sim part of the project. So
Fantastic.
I'm working on a project right now.
All right, and it's great to have you back here in the studio. I think
Thank you.
last time we were also joined by special guests,
Yes,
the
I also had my
snowman.
brother here, but
Yeah,
unfortunately, due to the weather conditions, he wasn't able to make it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got...
He melted along the way.
I was going to say, it snowed a little bit again today,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't be able to withstand the new lighting that we have here in the brand new
Yeah.
studio either. So, but he'll always live in our memory. Maybe he might return again one day, another Christmas.
Maybe, we may form him again for the next occasion.
Absolutely. And speaking of the anniversary right now, if you haven't had a chance to check it out during the break, we have the Steam Lunar sale that's happening right now for the Chinese New Year. And there's lots of great different products on sale from not only ourselves, but other people as well. But you should definitely go check out if you're looking for anything for American Truck Simulator or for Euro Truck. There's also a special bundle on there. Then go check out some of those sales. You can grab yourself a bit of a steal on there. I believe some of the discounts are really, really good. So go definitely check them out. Lots of exciting stuff happening there. But no, it's great to have you back with us. Absolute pleasure.
Great to be back.
And well, we're going to be talking more on the subject of American Truck Simulator, what's happening, what's to
hope so.
come. And of course, and we want to get kind of stuck in with it. Maybe if you could tell us, from the very beginning, what was your background or how did you start? I know maybe we've touched on this previously before, but for the people maybe that are joining us for the very first time, maybe they'd love to hear your story a little bit.
Okay, well, it all started over 20 years ago. No, I'm going to cut it short, keep it professional a little bit. No, I joined the company not even 3 years ago. It's like 2 3/4 years ago. Originally, I applied for a very different position than I'm doing right now. Originally, I applied to 2 positions, actually. I applied to a tester position and also junior producer positions. But based on my background and CV and all my experience from abroad, I worked in Germany in a gaming company before. So the company actually reached out to me and said, hey, we actually don't have the junior producer position set up yet, and we think you could try something else than just being a tester. We're kind of looking for map designers right now, and we thought you might fit the profile. Do you want to try it out? Well, obviously I jumped on it and took the chance, and it was kind of a hard time for me at life because I was at a different position in a different company back in my home city, and I wasn't really doing well. So this was kind of the bright light at the end of the tunnel, and I was really hoping it would work out, and it did. So actually, I applied to the map designer position. I got like a test project to do at home. I had like 2 weeks to make it. I basically learned how to work with the editor and learn all the tools and such. And after the 2 weeks, I finished my little project, which was like one little area in I think it was California or Arizona. And based on that little part of the map, the company actually decided to hire me, which was a huge relief for me, and I was really, really grateful at the time that I get a chance to work in a company like this, because in the past I've obviously played the games, starting with Euro Truck Simulator 2, and when I was a lot younger, I also played some of the earlier ones like the hunting sims and the other truck sims. That's a long, long time ago. So the road was a little bit, uncertain. I was really anxious when I was awaiting the results of my test, if I got into the company or not. And luckily it worked out. And been here almost 3 years now.
Wow. And so almost in coincides with the anniversary, almost in a sense.
Almost. I actually joined the company right at the day when we started doing the rescale.
Wow.
So that was the day. I think Arizona just released the free DLC, and like the day after I joined the company, and the rescale was put into process. So, which Andre already talked about in the previous part of the stream.
Of course.
About the rescale. That's about the time when I joined the company, and
Okay.
ever since then I worked my way from junior map designer to having basically my own team and a few people with whom I work on a project right now.
Wow. And so have you always been, straight in on the American Truck Simulator, or did you start off small with some maybe smaller projects they assigned to you?
I went directly to ATS. I actually got part of the map where the rescale was being done, and basically I was told, here's the part of the road that you'll be doing. Do some research, start working on it, learn by doing, and that's perfectly fine with me. I don't want to spend 3 weeks, like training somewhere or getting school or something. I like to jump straight into it and learn by doing. I got a lot of feedback, what I was doing wrong, what I was doing right, what could be done better. And that's the process. I teach by the best. So I quickly grasped the basic essentials and eventually started doing more and actually came up with some solutions to problems that we didn't address before.
Of course.
So it was cool.
That is, and I was just thinking actually there about jumping straight into such a huge project.
Yeah.
As we spoke before with other people saying it was quite a daunting task. Kind of going into the big great unknown of America and kind of
Yeah.
working with almost limited resources at the time. Was there anything maybe that you could take from maybe even before your job, or that when you're sitting there working on a map that you thought, oh, actually, I think this would be a really good idea. Stuff you've taken from previous maybe work experiences or different things that you had creatively in your head that maybe helped you throughout that process at the start when you were just getting started?
Well, the biggest motivation at the start, when I actually got here the first, was that I was coming from a really bad job before, and I was like, do not screw this up. If I say that like that, that's not offensive to anybody. Do not screw this up. So I really got into it. I tried pretty hard, and I think it paid off. I didn't come into the company with any prior experience in the field. Well, in the gaming field, yes, but not in the like design or art part of the development process. No, I used to work as a community manager, so it was diametrically different to what I'm doing right now. So I was really grateful for the chance, because I've always enjoyed like playing with Legos and Minecraft building stuff and composition and all that stuff. And gradually I learned a lot more, like the technicalities, optimization processes, and how to design the cities, what to look out for, what are the like traffic laws, and you have to take a lot of that into consideration when you're building the maps. It's not a straightforward process, especially if you want to keep it as close to reality as possible.
And I can imagine that can be quite a little bit of a tougher process if you just when you're jumping straight into the whole mapping straight into it as they put you on the spot kind of when you join the company. I imagine that your colleagues almost like almost in a sense your saviors when it came to like maybe if you got stuck on something you really couldn't quite figure it out, that they were there helping you out every single day, because obviously maybe they would have a bit more experience.
Actually, I'm kind of stubborn in that way. I like to find solutions for myself. So when I got into a position where I was struggling with something, I actually took the extra time and went the extra mile to try and fix the issue like myself and come up with a new solution, which I'm really grateful for. That was an option. Nobody basically stood behind my back 24/7 and checked where I was clicking and what I was doing exactly. I had regular checkups, but it wasn't like somebody stood behind my back 24/7. I really enjoyed that, because I love learning by doing, and mistakes are part of it. So making mistakes was the biggest learning process in the doing, and I'm grateful that I got the chance to go through that phase, without too many issues.
And would you say now that you look back on it a little bit, was there any like really big challenges that you're like, oh my goodness, like I just really found it tough at that time? Was there any particular part of a previous map that you can maybe share with the community that this was a little bit of a struggle for us, but this is how I got through it?
I don't know if I'm going to remember any actual details, but when I got into the company, I I had a slight idea of how composition in such game works, but very quickly I found out that limited viewing distances are not your friends. Basically, you have to fit an entire world into 1.5 kilometers of viewing range. So what you end up with doing naturally in the beginnings is creating a corridor. So you basically make a straight road and you build a corridor around it. But gradually, as I was progressing, doing more, and I was doing better, you start realizing that's not really how the world looks. You know, you don't have 200 meters of a flat road and then directly you got the hills or something like that. You got to build it up gradually. You got to play with the terrains and the vegetation you got. In reality, if you see an object in distance, it appears smaller than it really is. So taking, for example, tree scaling into consideration is a big thing. So if you're placing trees right next to the road, you make them big, you make them large to appear, close. But then again, you can use the same tree in far away, but if you scale it down, it creates the immersion of depth. And thanks to tricks like this, you can actually make the game appeal a lot more open than it actually is. Unfortunately, it doesn't work everywhere, especially in cities where performance is usually an issue. But then in New Mexico especially, you can create some really wide vistas where you have really deep viewing distances. And thanks to tricks like these, and with a little bit of technological advancement where, for example, we now have an option to insert what we call FAR models. Those are basically models of mountains and basically backgrounds that you can override the 1.5 kilometer viewing distance. So you can get up to 4 kilometers of viewing distance, but only in certain areas. It's very performance heavy, so we're trying to keep it on the low end, basically trying to not burn people's computers because they wouldn't appreciate that. So, we're experimenting with it a lot now. So in the future, I think you can expect some more epic, long views that profit from this kind of technology. And I'd like to touch up on a little subject while we're talking about it. You were also talking about the East Coast eventually and getting to places like New York and such. I think it's actually important that we do not get there too quick so that the technology can catch up. I don't really think we have the technology yet to, tackle huge cities that are endless, blocks of roads. And I think the technology is not there for us yet. We're kind of doing okay with what we got now with the kind of scenery and cities that we build. But I think the East Coast is going to be a completely different category. And giving us time to develop the technology to make it really good and worthwhile is really important to us.
So patience is the key.
Yes, basically.
As much as some people are excited,
everybody wants it right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Give
We're in a
me
very
New York,
fast-paced environment, but I know that time does make a massive difference.
Yeah.
And going, touching back on the point of when you're saying about having beauty versus kind of performance in a sense. Do you feel like it's hard, it's stressful? Do you sometimes feel like your skills are limited by that performance?
Absolutely. That's probably the biggest bottleneck that we encounter while building the maps. There's a constant strive for more detail and more items in the scene and making it more beautiful, making it more authentic. But on the other hand, we're kind of going in a, how to say it, like a modular system of building the world. We're trying to get rid of huge pieces of the world that we just co-join together. We have a lot small pieces that we're trying to compose into the scene just as we want it, not how the artist prepared it. So that comes at a price, however, because every object that is placed into the map separately is basically draining more power from the system or computer. If I put it simply, it depends on the certain case. But in the end, the less items you have in the map, the better it runs, obviously, because there's less to render, there's less textures in the memory, and there are constantly being little tweaks here and there in the engine that help us, get those 3 more houses into the scene and the 20 more trees and make it still run as smooth just as smooth as it did on the same setup that it did. So that we're trying to not to increase the minimum requirements. That was actually a big talk recently, and we're still in the process of evaluating it right now. We have a given computer that we test the map on, and we have some performance, like restrictions. If it gets under certain FPS in a certain area, then obviously that's no good, and we have to go back and remake that part of the map. Optimization on its own is a little bit of alchemy, because you have many factors that feature into optimizing a certain scene or a city, and often it's back and forth. We call it ping pong. You play ping pong between the art department programmers and us. It's basically ping pong. You keep going back and forth between different people, and you're trying to find a solution for this problematic scene. And then 5 smart heads get together. They come up with an idea, and ever since that moment, we know how to tackle that issue in the future. But these issues keep coming up new and new, and as we're experimenting with newer technologies, these issues never go away. So it's an ongoing process, and I think it always will be.
So always something on the plate, always something to be looking at,
Absolutely.
Always something to be working with. And you touched a little bit on about experimenting with new and different things. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're one of the first map designers who came up with a new approach of building the rest stops in American Truck Simulator. The truck stops. Is that correct?
Yes,
Or
it's not a myth.
It's not a myth.
It's really
confirmed.
Yeah.
Confirmed
it's
it
really
right
here.
Exclusive right here on the stream.
Yeah, VIP. Get a Steam key, you can unlock me. That sounded wrong. Yeah, actually, that was one of the first things that I really delved down into, or focused on, basically, that we weren't doing, and I was like, we're missing out on such a big feature. Why are we sleeping in motels when in reality you have these rest stops along the way and truck stops? When I asked about why we're not doing it, I basically got the answer that we didn't have much time. We had to focus on the content. Obviously, that there wasn't enough manpower to focus on such a thing. But I found time to actually abuse our existing road system at the time, where I somehow managed to put together a really nice looking rest stop. It's still in the game. I think it was one of the first one. It was I think near to Barstow in California or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. I think it was somewhere along there. And that was basically a prototype. And when I showed it to other people, like from the map designer department and programmers department and artists, everybody's like, hey, it's doable. Let's come up with a solution where we can do it more effectively. So that's exactly what we did. We got new road prefabs. We got new road types. We made we worked hardly on making the transitions between the road and the parking spots to be seamless, and trying to make it really natural. Looking back at it right now, it doesn't look anything as good as it does right now. But that's the process of improvement. We started with something, we abused a certain technology or a certain process, and through prototyping and actually trying and cooperation between like 3 or 4 departments, we were actually able to get it into a phase right now where we have really beautiful and custom-made truck stops and rest areas where everything is functioning. You also got AI vehicles, where the trucks or cars are refueling in front of you, even though the place is completely custom built. The navigation works. I think that was one of the biggest improvements that was made at the time, and it also limits us nowadays a little bit because the truck stops and rest areas, they take a lot of space, and we always, when we're researching a new state for the next DLC or the next map part, that's one of the things that we take into consideration when designing the layout of the world or the state or the part of the road. You basically have to have where to refuel and where to sleep. And so the first 2 things that we look at are obviously truck stops and rest areas. But they are usually pretty large. They take a lot of space, and that kind of dictates how the road is going to look a little bit, because you got to give them enough space. And even though we're in a 1:20 scale, the rest areas and truck stops are usually in 1:1 scale, so that you can make all the turns right and everything fits. So it takes up a lot of space. However, I think it's still worth it. It's one of the highlights of your route. You know, your driver's tired, you need to refuel. You don't want to keep going to the same generic gas station over and over again. So you can give a little bit of love to these custom-made points of interest, like the truck stops and rest areas.
And it doesn't, you know, add a little bit of love, but it also adds the life to the game. You know,
Obvious,
I
yeah.
love driving down the highway and you can see those massive truck stops, and even if you're not stopping at it,
Yeah.
you see other trucks stop there,
Yeah.
and you just you really brings another element to the game. And I've heard some people asking this question. Maybe you can answer it. Is there anything maybe you think maybe in the future you could utilize more from those truck stops? Or can we look forward to anything coming from that point there?
I don't know what exactly you mean.
As in, like, can we expect any new features from truck stops in the future? Or is they are just as it is at the moment?
Currently, I think they're in a pretty healthy state. We do not miss any large features that we would want to get into the game. There are obviously some things that we would love to do that are somehow related to this, but I will not say anything about that as it's in very early stages.
Fair enough.
So
That's absolutely fair enough.
I don't think there's anything specific I can say about truck stops and rest areas that's in development. We're obviously paying more and more attention to it. So from the newer the content is, the better they look. So I think that's a step forward.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So obviously something to look forward to in the pipeline. But speaking of things that are working on now, is there anything you can share with us right now that you're working on currently as a designer?
I was told not to say anything, but there is something cooking in the oven. I think if people think about it a little bit, they already figured it out. I cannot, you know, leak anything without consent. So hi, Pavel.
Yeah, he's watching.
Yeah, I know. So the people theories that are on the forums and you know, social media that I sometime read, they are correct. Some of them. There's not many directions that we can you know, depart into with what we've got right now. You know, Oregon, Washington, basically finishing the West Coast. So there's not many options. So you have basically I don't know how many states there are neighboring with it, like 25% chance of hitting the right state. So
All right.
I'm zipping my mouth.
Zipping,
I'm
that's
not
it.
saying, no,
We'll
I'm
keep
leaving.
it more secret from here for now. Got you. And we actually have a question coming in from one of our users here, technology_with_pro, asking, will the whole game be from California to Montana?
I guess that's a question if eventually we get to Montana.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, no, actually, we've decided today that Montana will be skipped forever. No, that was just a joke. Sorry. No, I think we want to cover all the states. We don't want to skip any states, and obviously, we're not going to jump to the East Coast right now because it wouldn't make sense. So we're trying to, you know, progress individually, state by state, and we're not going to jump to South America right now. So I think I'm going to repeat myself. If people look at the map, think about where we are now with how many projects we got going on right now, you can kind of guess how long it's going to take us to get, you know, I don't know, to all the states that are connected to what we already have.
All right, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And another person asking, SPN91, can I see some Washington footage, please? Because people really looking forward to that brand new state that we've been teasing, you know, all so much about. We had that little teaser trailer in the blog post. And I believe, yes, we can show some footage with the Washington Bridge.
There we go. Would you look at that?
Look at that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So we can enjoy some beautiful footage from the upcoming DLC that was teased on the block, I believe. And we got the little teaser going on with the ferry and Seattle in the background.
Yep. So obviously this is in a work in progress state.
Yeah.
But looking very beautiful as it is already, you know.
Yeah, obviously.
Exclusive here on the SCS stream, again, another exclusive.
Yeah.
And there it
Here
is.
we go. There's the bridge coming up right now. Bridges were obviously a big part in Oregon as well. We took it up a notch in Washington. So the approach to creating these bridges changed a lot. Before, we requested a bridge from our artists, and they basically gave us a finished bridge. And then we had to adjust the map based on what they gave us. Nowadays, it works a little bit different. Again, we play ping pong between ourselves and the artists, where we create prototypes of the bridge. We basically, for example, lay out the city and, prepare where the bridge is going to be. And then artists prepare the bridge. We put it in the game, apply it to the correct place that it has to be in. And then, you feedback it back to the artist and say, okay, the bridge is too tall, or the curvature needs to be different because it looks unrealistic. So the communication or the development process here at the company is very much based on feedback. So if you do not say you have a problem with something, nobody really cares. If I put it like that, you got to go and tell that person, hey, I have a problem with this. Can we fix it? Can we take a look at it? And you have to be really proactive. Everybody's kind of fierce and kind of trying to do their best. And that really shows in scenarios like this, where, for example, with the bridges, where you keep feedbacking and then you get the perfect bridge, which is just fit for the place and will not be used anywhere else, basically.
All right. And speaking of, I was going to touch a bit more on the bridges in just a second, but we've just got word coming in that our Stig, driver behind the wheel, is taking on a special transport mission.
That's a big car.
It is a big car. It's not just a car, it's a massive cargo helicopter, I believe, one of those massive ones that you see flying around. And I believe this is going to be patched in or added to 1.33 for Oregon. So these are some of the new ones that they've added in.
I think so. That's coming up in the next update as a free update to. I believe I wasn't working on the special transport myself.
But I believe, these ones are, I think, maybe already released as a free update to add to Oregon. I believe it was this one specifically, anyway.
I think that's Portland, is it?
Yeah,
maybe.
So always adding to the game, and those special transports, I think at the time only had limited routes, but now they've actually added more routes. So always constantly adding to the game, and I think that's something that's really great for the community to be able to get more kind of out of the DLCs that they get.
I think people are actually kind of used to it by now, because I personally think it would be unfair if we released the special transport when California, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico were out, and then do not ever touch it again. Then we would have like 10 more states and no more special cargo or special transport. So that's one of the things that we keep doing. We keep coming back and refreshing the old parts of the map. Even though if it's little things like adding the routes or adding a little bit of road that people requested. It's always a pleasure to work on something like that.
Yeah, and this is already released in 1.33. This one version was just confirmed there. So you can go out and you can actually go play this in the brand new cities of Oregon, one of the latest states there. But obviously, as times go on, I can imagine we'll get a few more routes for different states as we go along as well.
We want to keep updating it. Like, people already experience what happened in basically ETS2 when Germany looks outdated right now. So we keep reskinning it now. And we want to keep doing that with ATS, but we wanted to start earlier so that the old parts of the map wouldn't get outdated too quickly.
And going back on a little bit just before this about the bridges, you're talking about the bridges. I don't know if you know, fun fact actually, Oregon is what many nickname, maybe a few locals, as Bridge City.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I've actually just only found that out today when I was doing a bit of research. Also known as the City of Roses. Not too sure why on that one, maybe something to do with Valentine's Day.
Maybe the bridges are made out of roses.
Maybe, who knows. And they say what is also the state's biggest city and core transport hubs. Of course, we're talking about Portland, the big city there, which also, according to Google, is known for its hipster scene. So if you love that sort of hipster stuff, then Portland apparently is the place to go.
That's not a city I'm moving to.
But you already talked and touched a few points on the challenges you face when creating Portland and the bridges around it. Was there any favourite parts of the city that you really enjoyed maybe working on, if you touched on it personally yourself?
Okay, so my main responsibility in Oregon was somewhere else than Portland. It wasn't in Portland directly. So I didn't work on the city as a whole, but I'm the creator of the two southern junctions in the city. Basically the one that exits to the east and goes in the direction of the Dallas and Pendleton, and then the southern one, which is connecting Portland to, I believe it's Salem.
Okay.
I don't want to lie right now. I think that's it. So I worked on those two. I made the layouts, created some of the signs there, connected it all together, tried and help with the optimizations as well. That was quite a challenge. Every time you have a high spot in the map, and then you're looking down at something, obviously the viewing distance is very limiting in that case. Plus you have to fit into everything into your performance window so that you do not exceed certain parameters. So you're always battling with the visuals versus the performance versus how it behaves. It's a painful process, and especially in this case in Portland, obviously you got the river going through it, and anybody from the gaming industry knows that reflections in water are pretty costly when it comes to hardware performance. And when you have the entire bridge or entire half of the city reflecting in the water, you gotta make some cutbacks and feature some technological principles that you haven't used elsewhere, because it's something that we haven't really done before. You know, people keep remembering Albuquerque, obviously, in New Mexico, which was also a point where we had a really tall junction, and you were looking down at the entire city below you, but there was no water reflection, luckily. That would have been even worse than it was right now. But those are the challenges of game developers and artists and programmers that we keep encountering every day, and issues that people don't really see when they get the final product, and then they're like, oh, there's a bush going through the road, the game is terrible. So there's a lot of things that we have to pay attention to. I'm not trying to justify our mistakes, I'm just saying, obviously a little bit of a how do you call it, love-hate kind of
relationship
environment.
Fair enough. And so you didn't work directly with Portland in Oregon,
no.
But it says here that you worked with, I don't know how to pronounce that, Dallas?
Dallas.
Yeah, I don't know if they E or A it, sometimes a bit difficult with the words there.
Dallas.
But speaking of difficult, was it a difficult place to build, working in that area?
Actually, I'm going to come back to the issue I was talking about right now, which was the river, basically water reflections. There's the Columbia River flowing above the Dallas, and there was also a huge dam that we had to include, which basically means two water levels. You have one on the top, one on the bottom, and obviously that also took a lot of viewing distance optimizations. Other than that, the city had to be kind of redesigned from real references, again because of performance reasons and space reasons, but I think it all worked out really well in the end. There's a certain part that I really love where you're going directly through the downtown of the city, and you have few landmark buildings which are brick made. You got a very tall church in there, and then you have the city hall, and then there's one more building. It's like a bank. No, it's not a bank. It's a clock tower, like a little pub or whatever it is. It looks really beautiful. It looks, how do you say it?
Picturesque?
No, nothing like anything else.
Okay, very unique. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it gave it a special spirit and feel in that regard, and I'm kind of proud of that downtown road. Again, it was a bit of a struggle to get it running, get it optimized well, but I think it all worked out in the end, and I really like the downtown part of it.
All right, so that's almost, would you say, like your favorite place to drive within that map is to explore that area?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
I actually have a place that I'm, if we're not talking about cities or if we're talking in general, there's one section of the road that I am proud of more than of the Dallas, at least in the visual department. It was actually pretty simple to make, like there were no performance issues, but the composition and the usage of new tools and new mindset approach, it helped me to create some really nice views that I'm really proud of, and I think they actually made it into the trailer or something like that. So kind of bragging rights.
Absolutely, yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And keeping on the subject of Oregon, what were the community responses from it? We talked about previously how we love seeing people talk about our games and what they're enjoying and maybe what they're not so much enjoying, because their feedback is so important to us. When you look back on the release of Oregon, what sort of things were you seeing? Were you happy with the responses, or how did it look for you guys?
I personally think that what Oregon did for ATS was what Scandinavia did for ETS back in the day. Scandinavia raised the bar very, very high above what was the norm back then. And I think Oregon did the same. We had enough time, we had enough resources, we had some very talented people working on it, and I think the result is just mesmerizing in certain places. It looks as organic as it can get with our current technology. We had a lot of new processes involved. One of them, for example, is the wood processing industry, where you go to the lumber site and you don't even notice, and you're inside the depot, and you're driving through the forest, and you have wildlife around you. I think there were many achievements in this DLC that we can be really proud of, and that some people can be jealous of. No, but the general, obviously, the response, at least from what I've read, people really enjoy it. I think it has a very high rating on Steam, about 95 or more %. Maybe it dropped a little bit, but last time I checked, it was 95%. A lot of people love it. There's a ton of new industries, ton of new cargoes. The maps are beautiful. It's handcrafted, beautiful. There's also a downside to that, obviously, because we set the bar so high, and people's expectations are so high right now. We feel the pressure that we gotta do something like that again. And I think we're on a very good road to fulfill people's expectations.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it. I mean, obviously, from that little snip of that exclusive bit of from Washington, lots of exciting things to come for sure. And I can imagine that you will probably outdo yourselves again, but also still raising that bar, which probably is a little bit nerve-wracking for you. Also, something that was very unique with Oregon as well, that corrects me if I'm wrong, that SCS have never done before, is the cooperation with Jessica Lynn, which was quite an interesting way in my opinion. I mean, for yourself, what was your opinion on that? Do you enjoy the music? Do you think it really helped tie together that whole immersion, that experience for the Oregon release?
I think the background that Jessica comes from helped us connect with the truckers a lot. She's not very famous here in Europe, but from what I've heard, she's very known in the USA as basically a folk singer, and she's a great singer, no doubt about that. And getting to cooperating with her was one of the best things that we could have done for Oregon as well. Connecting the game with some real life characters or people or places, organizations, helps us a ton. It's the same as with trucks, for example. If we had no-name trucks until this day, people wouldn't enjoy it as much, I think, because they love their Kenworth, they love their Peterbilts, they love whatever, Volvos. And getting more character and more people to cooperate with us on these projects is, I think, crucial for us in the future. We'd love to keep that trend going. And specifically with Jessica, I believe the first time we've met with her was at Nürburgring 2016.
On the road.
Or 2017, I can't remember right now. I think it was 2017. Yeah, that was the first on-the-road team that we went with the simulators. I think that's where we got into contact with her, and it was basically a matter of saying hello and getting into contact with her. One of our colleagues took care of that, and we started messaging back and forth, and then we agreed on using her song in one of the trailers, and I think that's great. We'd love to keep doing that in the future as well.
Absolutely. And quickly want to really give a massive shout out to our community that's watching right now. I hope you're really enjoying the stream right now. I know there's a lot of you out there. I believe we have about 950 viewers on Twitch. So we're going to call out each of your names now, just to say it now.
Okay, open up the chat window. No, let's do it.
But no, thank you very, very much. I'm always seeing lots of PogChamps and Kaffers and all sorts of chatting happening in the chat, as we can see on the screen here. So really a massive thank you for sticking by and for asking your questions. Actually, we do have a question coming in from a very long name.
I love that
I'm not
name.
sure. It's like
Rumble Blowing Aggregate.
Yeah. You get the best names on Twitch. Saying, what are the most impressive hacks that were made somewhere in the map that actually work? So some shortcuts or things that you worked around.
Hacks. I don't think I should say any of them, because if our programmers or anybody else heard about them, I'd find a certain paper that would get me fired on my table. No, it wouldn't be that bad, but I don't know what we could all call a hack. I think one of the first bigger hacks was with the rest areas. We hacked certain technologies that were made for that usage, and we basically built on that hack and made it a legit technology. and that helped us eventually grow it into, custom-made truck stops and rest areas. That was one of the larger ones that I can think of. There are obviously some performance-related hacks that probably people wouldn't find very interesting because they're very niche and not many people, care about the optimizations. They want to know when Washington is coming out and
Of course.
what's the next truck and give us mon. Sorry.
Yeah, good stuff. And we already see a little bit of wildlife, here and there, kind of in the background. But via stream asking, is there any chance of deer or wildlife on the road in the future?
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
On the road. That's a bit of a ongoing issue. We've had that issue for several years now, I think, with pedestrians as well. As we're trying to calm down, as we're trying to, I lost my train of thought right now. Deer on the road, pedestrians. Okay, so as we're trying to make the world a little bit more alive, we obviously encounter the issues that we need people or wildlife to get into the game. The biggest issue is that the game is PG-3 plus or something like that, and we are not GTA. We do not condone violence or misbehavior or driving under the influence and stuff like that. And hitting pedestrians or animals with your truck is definitely something we do not want to get to. So again, it's a little bit of an issue with technology. We do not have the technology to make, how to call it, like dynamic pedestrians and wildlife that would react to your truck. Basically now, if you see a person or an animal in the game, they're basically set on the spot, or they have a predetermined like a route or path that they walk on, and they never get into your way, then you shouldn't be able to hit them. Because especially kids could get the wrong idea of how the real life works, and they might get the idea that if you hit somebody with a truck that nothing happens, that you drive through them, and that's definitely not something we want to do. And we're trying to keep it tamed and not release pedestrians and animals on the road. So currently it's not possible. In Oregon and New Mexico, you can find some instances where there are animals near to the road, so you can still see them, like deer or some birds, cows, but they're always behind a fence, and that's for this reason. And I don't think there's anything certain if we're ever gonna have that feature of having like living animals or pedestrians on the road.
All right. Well, obviously that's one of just the many things that we have to think about when it comes to it. Obviously, we get lots of great ideas, but it really does have to be thought out. So for now, when you do see animals in games, it's probably just the best to view them from a distance.
Yes,
just
exactly.
Appreciate the wildlife, appreciate the
leave
world
them
around you.
alone. Do not want them on the road. You wouldn't help them in any way.
Absolutely. Now we've been asking kind of like a series of questions from different users as we're running out quickly out of time. We want to kind of know just a few things that what you think about the game or what you enjoy.
Okay.
What is your favorite truck? Do you have a favorite truck in game?
I enjoy the Peterbilt 389.
Okay.
I love the old school shape of it and the looks. It was one of the later added trucks. It wasn't in the original game. I think it was the first added truck after release, I believe, and I really like it to this day. So.
All right, wonderful.
I think that's my favorite one.
Yeah, and do you have like a favorite state that you love to drive through, or an area that you love to drive? I know you already talked about a little bit about the Dallas and those areas there, but within the whole map, do you have just like a favorite road to even drive on?
Well, that's a tough question. Obviously, any road in Oregon that contains a lot of forests and rocks, those are my favorites. As Andre that was here before me already said, your favorite parts of the map are the latest ones. Also magically water refill. Wow, how did that happen?
Incredible.
So obviously the latest contents are always your most favorite ones because you use the newest assets, newest technologies, newest processes, and it always looks the best. And there are some parts of the map that we are working on right now that was unannounced that I think are gonna slightly blow people's minds. I don't want to exaggerate, obviously.
We'll see. We'll see. It might.
I never said anything. I hope they're looking forward to the next state.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to for sure.
Definitely.
This is just a small piece of just a little bit of information in the
Just
bigger
a
picture.
Little tease.
Little tease. Going on to the other questions that we've asked from our previous people here in the studio. What is your top 3 games that you've ever played or played recently?
Well, it's going to be a tough list, but I'm going to repeat myself a little bit because I've just finished playing God of War from last year. I don't know if you've played it, but oh my God, that game is absolutely fantastic. I'm not really into games lately. I don't play as much, but God of War just blew me away. Kind of, I finished the main campaign and now I'm doing all the side quests when I have some time. And it's a game that just keeps on giving, you know, story-wise, graphics-wise, characters, all the stuff that you can do. The gameplay is just top-notch. And there are just areas, and from the point of view of a map designer or a level designer, basically somebody who works with the art department, you gotta appreciate the work that was put into those places in that game. Because I was trying to find out basically a system that they were creating the world, or what was the mindset behind it. And I've realized that there must have been some incredibly talented people working on it. And honestly, I think it's currently my favorite game of all time.
Oh, right, wow.
I think second game behind that would be something a little bit different, which is Resident Evil 4.
Okay.
I remember when I was a kid, we had a PlayStation 1, and my brother used to play Resident Evil 1 and 2 on the original PlayStation. Having the memories of being a little old kid, like 7, 8 years old or something like that, and seeing your older brother playing a horror game, you know, you get the nightmares and you don't want to watch it, but you still do. So you keep going like that. You keep looking through your fingers, and then when I got older, I was like, oh look, Resident Evil 4 came out not long ago, so I'm gonna give it a shot. I replayed that game about 7 times. I love it so much. The pacing of the game is perfect. The gameplay is superb, and right now I'm also looking forward to the Resident Evil 2 remake that was released right now.
Yeah, just recently.
So I hope I'll get to it eventually, but there are several more games that I want to touch up on, but Resident Evil 4 stands on basically the second place in all of my favorite games right now. So I hope the second game is also good, like the remake that they've just released. The third favorite game, I'd probably have to say Counter-Strike Source. Even though it doesn't contain much like artistic value or some story value, you got to appreciate it for some other stuff, like the gameplay polish and the community around it.
Of course.
Like, it used to be a little bit different about 10 years ago than what it is now, but those were some of my most, how do you call it, fruitious year in gaming. I don't know what the word is. Where I spent a lot of time on one game. I think that's the single most game that I spend the most hours on. I think about 1,500 hours or something like that. So that influenced me a lot. I had some good friends on it back then, and those times are gone. So you got to keep going forward. And God of War helped me in that regard a lot. It kind of re-sparked that that love for games, and now I want to play some more games that are like that. So I'm really looking forward to, for example, like I said, Resident Evil 2. I want to get into Red Dead Redemption 2. I want to get into the Marvel Spider-Man that came out last year as well. Obviously, you can tell I have a PlayStation, so getting all these exclusives out of the way would be great. I'm looking forward to the new Ori. And I could go on and on, so I'm just gonna be quiet right now.
I mean, we've already heard that from the previous, from Andre Arts saying that he really likes God of War as well. And someone's asking if 2 senior map designers like God of War, then can we see some paint jobs with God of War motifs on the horizon, possibly?
I'm kind of fond of the thought that we have Kratos, the guy that you play as, being behind the steering wheel, being all grumpy with his beard, and his son Atreus sitting beside him, and they're delivering the mother's ashes into the highest point of the map. So maybe a future event. I don't know.
Could be an interesting add-on.
Yeah.
And finally, before we run out of time here, if you could bring any features to American Truck Simulator just by the push of a button, which would you like to add into the game?
That's a tough question. I actually saw Andre when you asked him, and I thought about the question, and I couldn't come up with an answer. I think what we have right now is a is a very good base of building upon it. We have a lot of new talented people. We have the passion. We have the resources. We just need a little bit of time now to get it all going and get the machine going, and then we do not only have to dream of what we want to add, but we can actually add it and make it a reality. And I think that's the biggest thing that we want to do right now. You know, invest into the future, teach new people, learn new tricks, get new systems going on, keep improving in every aspect of the game, and keep rolling. So I don't think there's a certain one feature that I would love to get into the game right now.
It is a big question to ask. It is a big question to ask, but it's always interesting to find out.
Actually, the answer is 42.
42. It's the answer to everything. It's the easiest question. Well, unfortunately, that is all time we have for you in the studio. It's been a pleasure having you back in the studio from previously, but I'm sure we'll see you again very much in the future.
Maybe.
But it's always great to have an insight of the things you're working on and how it all started and where it began. And I can only hope that the community enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, so, I enjoyed it as well. Thank you for having me on the stream, the first one in our own studio with our own equipment. So it's always a pleasure, being part of something new. And thanks to the community. Thanks for being great and give us a little bit more time again.
Absolutely, no. Thank you for your work into the anniversary, 3 years of American Truck Simulator, and the work you put into there.
We're kind of missing confetti and stuff
we are.
Like
we should have some, just celebrate.
SCS Snowman is missing.
I know. It's not the same. It's not the same.
I'm going to shed a tear tonight.
All right. Well, we're almost done with the stream, but there is one more part coming up that I think everyone should be very, very excited for. We have Pavel Shabor coming back into the studio, and he'll be talking a bit more now. So we've had a bit of the past, we've had a bit of the present, but maybe a few things on the future of American Truck Simulator and the things we have to look forward to. Maybe there might be a few more exclusives like we've seen as well. All you're going to have to do is stick by for now. We'll be back very, very soon here in the SCS studio for the last part with Pavel Shabor, where we'll be answering more of your questions and having a lot more to look forward to. Questions. Exactly, all of the questions. We'll see you again very, very soon. We'll be back after a quick 5-minute break, a quick 5-minute breather, and a lot more to look forward to in the future. We'll see you then in 5 minutes. for your patience during that little bit of a break, but I hope you had the time for a little bit of a breather to kind of take in all of the information from our fantastic guests from our team that we've been interviewing for the 3rd anniversary of American Truck Simulator. If you're just joining us now, if you've been with us the whole time, welcome back. It's great to have you with us here in the SCS studio, and I'm back again joined by the one and only Pavel Shabor. How are you doing?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, good. No, it's good to have you back. He joined us in the beginning of the stream. If you did miss that, then for sure we'll be uploading these videos on demand, or VODs, some people call them. You can view them on our Twitch, and I'm sure they'll be uploaded to our YouTube as well, which you can find by searching SCS Software. And I'm sure there'll be lots of notes as well from the community posted around the forums as well. And just another little thing, if you haven't heard already, the New Year Lunar sale is on for Chinese New Year on Steam, which is now live. Lots of different products on sale there, including a very, very special bundle for the Lunar New Year. So you would definitely have to go check that out on the Steam store, as well as many other discounted products if you're looking to grab some extra bits either for your American Truck Simulator as well as Euro Truck as well. There's lots to look out from there. Going back now to your questions, also maybe a few different little teasers as well. We'll be talking to Pavel, and really we want to start off by talking a bit more about the community. There's a lot of speculation going on, as you can imagine. There's we've had the teaser of Washington, but there's also been a lot of talk about possibly other things happening in the pipeline. One of the biggest speculations that have been appearing on the forums and social medias, I'm sure you've seen plenty of it around yourself, is this the year that we could see 2 map DLCs for American Truck Simulator?
Well, that's the plan. It should be the year when we start a new era of producing content faster from the point of view of what the players see. Of course, internally, each DLC requires a full team and a full pre-production, production, and post-production periods to fully gestate.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that we have to have 2 teams in parallel, and actually a 3rd team pretty much in early progress already to keep the ball rolling. So this is the plan. People usually maybe surprised that we mostly just hint and don't want to promise too much, commit to any deadlines. It's not that we would like to torture people, to torture our players by keeping things secret for no reason. The thing is that we try to manage expectations, and we try to not to disappoint people, because if you promise something and then ultimately you decide that for quality reasons you just need to sit on it and work on it for a bit longer, then we've seen it many times at other game projects. Some people get upset and frustrated that we have broken a promise. So that's why we usually keep the cards very close to our chest to the very last moment, just to be sure we are ready for release. It may complicate something in marketing. Usually when gaming companies announce their project release half a year ahead of the actual release, they can pump the people up, and the channel, the marketing works with the retailers and everything. Since we are mostly digitally released, we can improvise a bit more with the dates. But then we cannot really pump people up. We just hint at the release coming closer and closer, but we just announced a few weeks before we are really out. So this is not like exercise in teasing people and torturing them. It's really about being able to commit to the date when we feel we are finally ready. Because until the very last minute, you see some performance issues in map, and you have to cut content, you have to redesign things or optimize things again and again until it works even on the lowest minimum requirement computer that we expect ourselves to work with. So in our case, as we prefer quality over time in project management, we prefer strongly to also keep people guessing until the last moment. It's not something evil from us. Mm-hmm. It's an attempt to keep things under control. But really this year we have already confirmed one of those states, Washington State, and as my kind predecessor and map designer just before me has been hinting, there's not that many directions left for us to go, so people have been making very good speculation guesses about what's coming next, and this is the plan. We'll be working on a third DLC, and we'll see how quickly that goes. It's all about ramping up actually new teams, establishing new leaders, new structures, new testing loops. So there's a lot of work that we have to learn ourselves, because if you go from one team to two or from two teams to three, it's still a huge challenge for us to learn to cope with that, communication, logistics, everything.
And speaking of actually Washington, and on that basis, we did see a clip earlier from Washington and a little bit of drive and some of the bridges that and that. And I'm not sure, do we have another clip maybe we could show that's kind of exclusive to the stream here? I'm not sure if they have one on the ready or not, but a lot of people are really looking forward to that, and it's also a game they can add to their wish lists right now on Steam. Is that correct, on the store page?
Yeah, that's a new trend that Steam has allowed to publish the pages of projects well ahead of their actual release. So we think this gives us a chance to grab people's attention through the development. So we set up the page early and propagate the add to wishlist button from time to time on our blog and elsewhere. So if people are interested now, next week, a month from now, this will be a reminder for them when the DLC actually releases to get to know about it. So keep pushing that wishlist button.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really great to see the community response, again, from that, as I mentioned earlier, from all the people on social medias, talking about it and etc. like that. But another massive speculation that's been on the mind of a lot of players, again, that you've seen all around online, is that is there the possibility of SCS gear? Could there be more branded wheels or pedals, etc., more suited for the game at play?
Well, that's quite a challenge. We don't have any expertise in that. We cooperate with one of the manufacturers of the motion seats. That's one little experience we have with hardware connected to our game. I think the idea, the notion that we may one day have specially developed steering wheels or pedals suitable for, or shifters suitable for our games, it's cool, it's tempting to extend, but at the same time, given how stretched we are on all the tasks and projects we assign to ourselves, I cannot imagine now that we would be jumping at that opportunity. We would have to be really strong interest from one of the established hardware manufacturers to do a boutique line of such controllers. It may happen. If it happens, then fine, but we wouldn't be able to develop this, the engineering, to do the engineering on our side. We would have to partner with somebody strong. So unless somebody out there is waiting for us and knocking on the door, I don't think we would be actively pushing in the direction. But at the same time, if the opportunity arises, then I'm sure having a really good shifter or appropriately sized and with appropriate buttons and levers, a cluster around the steering wheel would be a perfect thing for the super hardcore players.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm intrigued, but it's more like a dream now. Sorry.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of more, like you're saying, the hardcore players just wanting that a little bit more of immersion, just to kind of help them feel like they're actually in the game. But another also big community speculation, people have been asking a lot about the truck situation in game. Obviously, we have quite a range of trucks already in the game, but what future trucks could we see? Is there any teasers planned that's upcoming? Because I know a lot of people are asking about those.
Well, I'm not sure if through the Steam you have already shown and people have seen one of the half-finished trucks that we have under development currently for ATS. So I don't know what the.
Or maybe we're getting one up here. Actually, it might be. Let's have a look. Here we go.
Okay, so this is a teaser of us walking through the studio.
There we go. Taking a look right into the process of it in the studios here.
So this is one of our senior vehicle guys, Marek. Hi, Marek. And obviously this is the result of one of the trips to the US that we talked to these companies, we establish friendships, even cooperation, and we get more traction since for about a year we have had improved traction with these companies. So finally work is being done that's official and approved, pre-approved sort of, or under a license that we have already signed. So we don't have to just build it speculatively and hoping for things to happen. This is happening because we've already get in touch with the OEM. So this is one of the trucks that we have been, and people will see that it's an international vehicle. Well, the other, it may be a year. I'm just say may, because there may be unknowns that will influence how things progress, how fast they do. This may also be the year when we introduce 2 new high-quality vehicles into American truck, high-quality tractors, like the new generation with all the fine detail and so many options that people got used to ever since we released the new Scania. So, but it all depends, because it's all about getting the reference material, going through the testing, getting the final approvals, which may sometimes require a repeated back and forth process of improving some things, depending on how well the testing goes. But the idea is that even the vehicle factory should speed up the process. I've mentioned it probably multiple times during our previous communications or streams. Building a vehicle is like a crazy project for us. It's well over too many years currently of work invested into a vehicle. You start with the research and resource gathering, you build the interior and exterior, which are not the most like time-consuming parts of it all. But then you have to do all the variants of the chassis and cabin and aftermarket and chrome versus painted versus plastic mirrors, all that stuff. It goes into hundreds of elements, hundreds of parts that make up what we consider one truck ultimately. Then you have the paint jobs on top of it that you have to revisit all the existing ones and add the new ones. The situation is slightly easier for the vehicle team in American tractors. Fewer paint jobs and fewer trucks so far, so a new paint job or a new truck doesn't pull that many capacity. But still, overall, there's so much time invested, and at the same time, the same team has to create new cargos, new trailers, new AI vehicles even. Sometimes we introduce into the cities, we introduce city transport vehicles, so there's even more hunger for that. So we, just like with everything, we never seem to have enough capacity to do everything. So we balance out. Hopefully this year we may get either 2 of them completed or very close to having 2, and that should hopefully only progress for the better in the upcoming years. We have good traction with licenses now, so we may be at a point at one future moment when we would have even more licenses than people to work on the trucks. Hopefully we'll be able to hire some good new senior people to expand in that department as well.
All right, and obviously, as we saw from the footage there, the quality looks fantastic, and that's all thanks to that new technology that we're talking about earlier, where they scan with the 3D photos, etc. And I think it's something they said we can expect to have like almost the new Scania quality as we see. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the idea, that would have a way higher triangle count, way higher detail level than what we were, pumping out 3-4 years ago. It's not about just having better reference materials or having better CAD files or scans or models. It's about our technology now being ready to crunch 300,000 polygons per vehicle versus 100,000 a year or 2 ago. Our programmers did some optimizations in how we handle the rear view mirrors, how they split the vehicle into individual pieces that are only visible by each mirror. That saves a lot by processing less of the whole triangle count per vehicle per mirror as it was in the past. So technically we try to compensate for the increased detail so that even on older computers with lower detail you can still play. So new stuff is coming. It's going to be good quality, and I just wish really we had even more capacity for the new trucks that are planned.
Very, very exciting stuff. And obviously the right kind of place and time to do it here on the very special occasion of the 3rd anniversary of American Truck Simulator. So all very, very exciting stuff. So thank you for sharing that. I really, really do appreciate that. I know it's been a lot of community speculation around, and I'm sure there's a lot more exciting things to come in the pipeline, and this is only just a taste of the pie to come. That's going to be very, very sweet, I'm sure of it. And a lot of you actually been sending in your questions through our forums to ask to you, so we're going to ask you a few of them if that's all right by you. someone asking here, which state are you looking forward to most reaching when you're obviously we're on our way to working around the whole of America? Do you have a favorite state that you think, oh, this is going to be really, really cool to drive around actually?
It's hard to select because then somebody might feel like overlooked. But actually, I would be super happy if we managed to reach Florida, because then we would have all of the South at least covered, and that would mean we really would go ocean to ocean. But even Texas would be fantastic, because then we would be at least Gulf to the Pacific. But then again, you have these huge cities in the Midwest, and you have the East Coast. So, I would love to be in New England, basically, because that would probably mean that we are everywhere. And then we never said this is a US truck simulator. We always said that we may find ways to cover more than the US. So if we even one day make it to Canada, or at least northern Mexico, wow, that would be a playing field, that'd be playing grounds to have fun. So I wouldn't just, let's say if you need one state, let's say Florida would be a good indicator that we are on the right path, that we are progressing, that we are reaching some distances.
Okay, well, yeah, no, very, very exciting, and it's just what I probably look forward to the most for myself is, if we ever, when we do reach that state, or if we ever reach that state, is that when you're driving through all those different states, it's just, the amount of diversity you see, the amount of different areas that you're driving through and how it changes, and it'll be really, really cool, for, I think, a lot of people just to see how, you just, when you travel through those, how the map changes and how it works and the different landmarks and features, and I think that's something I'm very, very excited for the future. I imagine a lot of people are as well. And Chrissy also getting in touch with us here. Thank you for your question. Asking if there's any information on trailer brands from American Truck Simulator, because obviously we have the likes of Schwarzmüller and Krone as well in ETS2, Euro Truck Simulator. Can we expect anything for American Truck?
As far as I know, we have signed a license with one of the manufacturers from American continent. And I'm not sure I can really divulge the details, but there is a micro team working on the new trailer. So hopefully still this year we might see even new trailer pack. Okay. With some real brands that people really enjoy this connection to the reality. So hopefully things progress well, and the feedback on the early versions are positive from the manufacturers, so that they would be happy, and then we can put it out. Great. It'll be great.
Right. And keeping on the subject of kind of like add-ons and such, another question coming in asking, will there be any truck tuning packs for American Truck Simulator in 2019?
I'm not sure we have any tuning pack right now in the pipeline. We have been talking about this. We have even get some interesting conversation with one of the OEMs, because they have a huge catalog of tuning parts that they may be able to support in a like promo DLC from their point of view. But I think all the capacity that we have now is focused just on building the core content, which is vehicles, which is trucks, which is tractors, which is trailers. So maybe it's somewhere in the future, but possibly not still in 2019.
Okay. And as we see here, the footage of us hauling some special transport live right now, us dig behind the wheel, taking that through different parts of America for you there. Someone does have a question about special transport, asking if it's going to be available in Washington at its release, because obviously there was a few routes that had to be added later for Oregon, but can we expect more routes for it on the release of Washington? I
think that with every new DLC, we'll be adding a few new transports. And we will even be revisiting all the regions, of course, because what started as the initial seat amount of transport routes will need to grow over time. It's like commitment. It's a huge commitment for us, basically, to have hundreds and hundreds of jobs eventually in the bigger, fuller rendition of America. So obviously, a few of them will be appearing immediately, and then probably in another point release, we'll be spicing it up with another few from here and there. So yes, the idea is that always people who love to play special transport should get something new to test out their skills, and that's the same with Washington State.
All right, and of course we have some very unique trailers that go with the special transport. Like earlier, we saw the cargo helicopter for that. But one of the people, one of our community, is asking. I think it's coming from Amazing ATS again, saying, when are we going to get the shark aquarium for special transport DLC? I imagine he's referring to the one that we showed off on the blog
It was
once.
like a joke
Yeah.
image. But actually, as I know that this was really, because the testers are people too, and they want to have fun. They used it as a placeholder kind of box-like element to test the passage through some tight spots. It was never meant to be a release. It was always like an inside joke here, and I don't think we are ever going to release it. But it's kind of April Fool's Day, maybe content for one of the future streams. We of course, just as we did with European special transport, there may come a point in time when we even mix in a new cargo into the established DLC, just a free addition, free expansion, because even though the initial mix was reasonably diverse, there is never enough, right? Like in the base game, you always want more tractors, you always want more cargos. So from time to time, we sprinkle things around, not just the base game, but also around the DLC. So no promises yet, but of course, we'll want to give people more cargos to transport, more reasons to come back to the game, more reasons to buy stuff for the game. So it's not like the special transport DLC is ever done and dusted. It's always in evolution.
Okay, and even though the shark is quite an interesting idea to have as a trailer, we do have When People Go Moo, interesting name, asking any chance of a livestock or log trailers within American Truck Sim?
I believe that as we go north now, the focus is more and more on the realistic industrial chains given for that region, and certainly forestry is big in the north, and I'm not sure about cattle like industry chain, but that's definitely in the cards too. So there will be more variety in cargo and more of this that will depict like this is not typically necessarily a long haul. You typically don't haul it right across the states, maybe with some exception of some rare timber or something, lumber. But we want to represent both the super long distance, long haul, and also come closer to the regional transport or regional industrial kind of cycle there. So these cargoes will eventually also appear in the game, and they will not be that long from this point.
Okay, so yeah, just like you said, with the special transport, never too far away from something new, something different in the pipeline being worked on. And although we've given away quite a few hints as it is already today, and quite a few teasers, and also some announcements, Numark asking, is there any hints for the second DLC?
We have promised ourselves not to be hinting or not to be revealing. I think there is some like big red rocks and boulders and hills there, but
it's definitely a good clue.
But we still stay like to the road. Of course, we don't go to national parks. We just want to show something cool in the distance and
of course
have a reason to put something on the package of the DLC. But obviously, we are going now. The only direction is east, so there's only a few states left for people to do. Of course, one of the factors that we want to address is the quite justified complaints about the hockey stick shape that we produce. So we want to even out the hockey stick. So that's another hint, I guess.
Okay, well that's all we can reveal at this time. But I'm sure a lot of people might have got the hint by now. Hopefully, with all the different speculation going around. SBN 91. Though also asking about what can we expect to be going into the 1.34 update.
Actually, this one is supposed to be quite feature-packed. It's some of our point releases are more like fixes of the previous mistakes and sins, or maybe it's a new bunch of content like a new DLC and any related changes that need to come alongside. And then from time to time, we bring features that are being developed in kind of a branched teams that are not necessarily on a daily basis putting it into the shared code base, but they are developing some feature for a few months, even years in some cases. And then if they finally are close to completion, they resurface kind of and put it into the common tree, code tree or asset tree for everybody to use and see and test. So every couple of releases is this major addition. So at that point, we should have major changes in the rendering subsystem. We should have some new cool stuff related to navigation. There is quite a few bullet point elements that I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I just, once again, expectations kind of management. There is some cool stuff happening. Hopefully, most of these features will survive the final test, because there may be a moment when you need to just pull something and sit on it for another update. But there should be a few good things happening in the 1.34 update that people find, nice additions to the games.
All right. So a lot to look forward to in that state. I believe we've got a message on the screen there. It might be...
I was just corrected there. I was talking about 35, not 34. Okay, so I'm taking it back. I think we should start giving some code names to updates, because I'm getting lost in all these numbers. Okay, so what I was just mentioning, all these bold promises of new features, that's 1.35, which is happening some, late spring time frame, hopefully. 1.34, on the other hand, as our closed beta testers know, is quite close to completion. This is one of the smaller updates, actually. That's just mostly map bug fixing that's been happening recently. Also, for European truck simulator players, they have something there to look forward to. We have already hinted at what's happening in the vehicle department. For our American truck simulator players, I believe there's a new road and some new even trailer.
Okay.
I forgot the details, but there is a few things that should please everybody without offending anybody. But this is really like a maintenance release mostly, with a few new additions. This is not like a major drop of new features that we have been working on. This is basically based on the previous point release, but with some bug fixes and some extra elements added on top of them. But the revolutionary changes when the map format usually changes a lot, when the coders contribute all the various evolutionary and revolutionary additions to the code base. That's only happening in 1.35.
Okay. No problem. That's okay. An interesting question coming in from Sion, or Sion, however you want to pronounce it, asking, how will DLCs work when there is not a continuous line from base game to new DLC? Because of course, as you were saying, we have a bit of a hockey stick shape right now, so you can go drive all the way along it. But when we get further down that line, how do you think will be the best way to tackle that?
Well, we're facing this same problem in both games, both American Truck Simulator, with Washington State now possibly being orphaned if you don't own Oregon. The same is about to happen in the European map, where the new region, it doesn't have direct connection to the base map. So I know that the designers and the programmers have come up with a solution that will feel okay, more or less okay. Of course, each state so far, or each region so far, allows for you to spend some time just addressing the locations in that state. But if you want to cross to the core map or the other content that you own and back, then we have to invent, of course, some sort of teleportation, or how we put the smoke and mirrors around it, how we define it. That's up to still, it's our little secret so far. But there will be a way for you to go back and forth. Of course, we would like to motivate people to own as much of the content as possible. So the idea is that we will need to come up with some good bundle offers for people to get those things reasonably priced, so that they are motivated to play the thing as we intended, as we planned, as a single unified experience.
Of course, yeah, and so nobody really does get left behind in the spectrum if they're not able to, get those states that they want just yet, but really just thinking about different solutions for that. So I'm interested to see what's in the pipeline. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that, for sure. Another question just relating back to the livestock trailers. saying, would livestock trailers, do you think, would be an issue? For example, with environmental groups, etc. Do you think it's a bit of a controversial thing then?
I think we'll just follow reality and face possibly whatever trouble there are out in the real, any controversies. But I do not expect like something major out of this. Of course, you never know if some activist group just discovers that there is this little game and decides to attack this little game. But I think in reality, any issues in the real world are way more pressing and way more worthy of people's attention than a game that just depicts of what's already happening out there. So I hope there will be no controversies. It's just about us. And I think we have been discussing it at some point even before for European Truck Simulator, that if there is something like a cattle trailer, you expect, as a player, you expect it to be kind of more active than just, if you transport grain or anything. There's more concern about what happens with the sound, what happens when you are resting. Is it like the animals are not just like goods, they require special attention. So can we dare to put this content into the game unless we also address, the other part of the simulation, that you need to care about your cargo more? So any questions like that you'll have to be tackled somehow, or maybe even glossed over just, but we know about these things, the team is aware of them, and we'll try to address them as best as we can.
Okay, yeah, and I know maybe some people would be concerned, but sometimes it's those little details that you almost sometimes forget about, that you think, oh, actually, we really, really should have looked at that. So honestly, again, with suggestions like that, it's always fantastic to be able to go to the forums or to our social media channels and to be able to, post those suggestions there, so we're a bit more aware of them if you think there's something that's missing or might be a rare there. Another question coming in from Carmichael. I know he speaks for a lot of the community. It's quite a big question, asking, can you please tell us about DirectX 11? The most asked question, he thinks.
Yeah, this is probably even more asked question internally at SCS than it is outside. I don't want to oversell the feature. We are working on DirectX 11, and if things go well, the 1.35 update may already see an early implementation of the new API as an option for people to switch from DirectX 9 or OpenGL to DirectX 11. It may, from the early experience we have so far, it may improve performance to some extent, but not necessarily the same across the board. Maybe people with faster computers will actually benefit even more than people with slower computers, because the bottlenecks are elsewhere. But the initial goal is feature parity. You will not see any shocking differences. In parallel, we are working on some Lightning model improvements that should bring us closer to the HDR era where we are now. Better light, especially in the middle of the day when the light is kind of more boring than the scenic sunlights and sundowns. So there is some work happening in that department. At the same time, DirectX 11 is kind of a stepping stone towards bigger things. It will give us a chance to really drop some old baggage in the rendering system. So once we have it fully up and running and confirm that it works for vast majority of people, we can drop DirectX 9 and give, throw away a lot of historic kind of legacy code in there that the internal structure of the engine that's tied to the API can be simplified a lot. And that's a stepping stone in two directions, stepping stone towards, let's say, DirectX 12 level or Vulkan API level features, which finally offer really something considerably bigger. And it's also a path towards consoles, whether PlayStation or Xbox, because that's the feature kind of equivalent of those current generation consoles, that we would have far easier time, I'm not saying easy time, but far easier time than where we are now for bringing our games properly to the consoles. I'm not saying the word porting, because usually sometimes the word port a game is associated with just throw away kind of project that you want to earn some quick money on. But if we ever go to consoles, we need to be sure that we can maintain the ports indefinitely, that we can keep in sync with whatever is happening on the PC platform, that all the platforms are primary, none of them is lagging behind considerably. So we want to do it like inside the company natively and properly to make it happen. So DirectX 11 is an important milestone on that route towards both consoles and towards better, more interesting features. So the new stuff should give us possibly better performance. It should unlock some graphical features that that were not in our reach for now, like getting access to the compute part of the hardware, where we can run some full screen effects. Many of our artists are looking forward to the moment when smart shaders will do the work they currently have to put into the vertices or into the textures. So, but that's the future. The immediate future for having DirectX 11 is simplification of the internals of the engine, dropping the old legacy code, and going from there to the more exciting stuff. Of course, for our art team, for all the designers and artists here, new toys is always good. It's
Absolutely.
good for their motivation. It's good for their artistic expression. So we're definitely really eager to see the new APIs becoming a part of the engine.
All right, so really, looking at it, it's a bit of a win-win for both sides. A lot of people want to see the DirectX 11 in that sense, and obviously it's great for our team as well, which is something to very much look forward to. Speaking of newer features, obviously we just had the massive kind of teaser and announcement of Washington as our next state, and I believe we have quite a couple of gameplay videos to show. We did show one earlier which looked absolutely fantastic. It was showing off the main Washington bridge in the new state, and I think we do have a couple more that we're going to show off here now on the screen that we can take a look at as well. So here we are in Washington State, still very much work in progress, but it's such a diverse and unique state as the others as well. I imagine it brings lots of new challenges to the team, but something very, very exciting to look forward to, I think, for the community, especially seeing new footage. I imagine they're all going very, very excited in chat, throwing all sorts of different emotes in there. This is them hitting up one of the way stations, I believe. Well, what are your thoughts and opinions of Washington? Are you looking forward to, anything unique within this state, or
I'm really curious how the guys are going to handle Seattle, obviously, because it's one of the biggest cities, and with our new kind of quality bar, what we expect of ourselves, it should be quite interesting. Of course, they can go in all guns blazing and create a ton of rich graphical stuff, but then they need to face the reality of being required to work on reasonable hardware, on low-level hardware too. So there's a lot of back and forth improvements, optimizations, coming back to finding alternate solutions to get the visual desires addressed. But hopefully that's going to work out as expected, as we need it to do. We need to work. So I'm really curious about that.
Okay, yeah.
And there is some little things in the background that people may or may have not noticed. I'm not even sure if this is a part of the video, but there is some work on the tools that the map designers use for building the worlds. Like there was this electricity poles and the wires. There is some work being done there to improve the flexibility of what the map designers can do with them, or how they look, and how quickly they can build this type of content, because it's a part of the clutter in the countryside. So there is some work invested into this area, even though it's like not critical for the pavements or the roads or the tarmac. It's elements like this that make up the whole impression of the countryside.
It looks really, really good, and even looking at some of the vegetation there as well, looking really a lot more high quality, and even seeing a dirt road off to the side there. I think we might even have one more video possibly we're going to show, if that's correct. I'm not too sure. There we go. This is the one that we saw earlier, and I think this is the farm one as well. So driving through that glorious sunset, and we've got I think it's quite famous for the state. Do we have the pumpkins on the left there?
Yeah, I guess.
So lots of farmland.
So of course, the further north we go, the less arid the region is. And if I remember from my trips to Seattle, I always was actually lucky. I typically hit really nice weather. I was there a couple of times. But I believe that the region is known for having like 200 plus days per year of rain.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
Much
But
more
then at
than
the same time, the nature will give back all the green, all the shades of green, and all the really nice climate when it comes to temperature. So I can totally understand that like the Seattle area is really great for living. Of course, you have all these high-tech companies from Microsoft to Amazon to Valve, our friends at Valve, to Boeing, all clustering around that region. So for us, it's a great place to be finally, for a great place to get. So I'm really looking forward to driving through it.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, and even seeing it in prime here, you know, the sunsets and sunrises in the game are absolutely beautiful, and really brings that golden glow to the roads of in the country. And you can almost imagine yourself listening to some nice country music as you're driving along here on your radio, on your playlist, or wherever it may be. And even the little details like the scarecrow, really fantastic to see. Really, really nice little area. Looking forward to the farmlands as well, like you said, the lush greens and all the farms as well. Fantastic stuff. Well, there we have it, folks. Some exclusive video footage from Washington.
Just a few glimpses, obviously, because of course the team is very, very much hard at work still. It's not quite, it's finished. So they had to select carefully a few spots that already resemble the final quality, the final product, but still everything is up in the air of how quickly they will deliver on this. So there's just some solid months of work still ahead of the team to get it wrapped.
And this is one of the famous Washington bridges, I believe. And again, just looking lovely in the sunset there, and really a lot of detail going into those. I think bridges is something that the teams are all becoming all too familiar with now. There's so many unique ones that reside across America.
Well, it changed from the early years of the company typically when we were like 10 years ago, we were maybe 10 people together in the company, and everything we created had to be repurposed multiple times. So any bridge, any office building, any intersection, any gas station was put into the world repeatedly again and again, maybe with a tiny change. But now we build so much unique stuff, so many buildings just are one use, or so many landmarks are just from that one spot, and the bridges are no exception. So, you know, considering how much effort and money is invested into these creations, of course, we are always hesitating to how to balance the uniqueness with the budget. That would be still reasonable, but we love peppering the world with cool stuff, so we're doing it more and more as the years go.
Okay, and well, it's fantastic to see that footage, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Coming up on the screen here now, you should be able to see it, folks. We have a very special anniversary bundle that's out for the 3rd anniversary of American Truck Simulator on Steam. I think also included within the Lunar New Year sale. And there's quite a bit you can get from this pack. So if you're looking to grab some new bundles and new parts, or some things you've really been missing from your American Truck Simulator, you can grab it here in the anniversary bundle. Includes the base game, you've got the wheel tuning pack, the steering creations pack, heavy cargo, New Mexico, Oregon, special transport, the Dragon truck design pack, and classic stripes as well. It was really a good bundle to get you started, or even if you have a friend.
Of the core material for the game, of course.
Absolutely.
Basically, all the crucial elements are there.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can really design your truck, make it your own, and then head across some of our newest states in American Truck Simulator, all specially created for the 3rd anniversary of American Truck Simulator. So go check it out.
This is a real time-limited bundle, as I understand. It's only going to be up for a few days of the sale.
Okay, so grab it while it's still there. Absolutely. And just before we wrap things up here in the SCS studio, because we're running out of time very, very quickly, we are actually going to be giving away on screen, I believe. We are going to be giving away a copy of the American Truck Simulator Enchanted Edition. So now's your chance. I'm not sure if it's appearing underneath me, but there's only one key. And if you're the quickest to grab it, then you will be the lucky owner of that Enchanted Edition. So wherever it's appearing magically on this screen right now, whether it's down below or up above or wherever it might be, then now's your chance to get that. So if you're a quick typer, you can be the lucky owner of that Enchanted Edition. I imagine someone will really, really enjoy that for sure. So I believe it's on screen now, somewhere along here. So good luck to everyone going through that. Okay, well, unfortunately, that's all time we have for here in the SCS studio. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thanks for hosting the show for such a long time. Your endurance is crazy. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for going through all those questions that people have. Sometimes they are, can be repeated a little bit, but the community, you are the ones that we really care about, and that we're really, really happy to be able to bring these live streams to you. And we're looking forward to bringing many more in the future, hopefully as well. Before we go, is there anything else you would like to say to the community?
Well, thanks a lot for staying with us all through the development, all through the releases, and all through this particular stream. We will try to do more about streaming now that we have bought the cameras and the lights. There's this really strong light that we are sitting under. We'll be finalizing the decorations. We'll be finalizing the formats for new types of streams. It's not always going to be like two talking heads, just talking stuff. We plan to do different kind of formats. Sometimes there will be more people in the studio. Sometimes there will be just somebody in the classical YouTuber format, just sitting behind the steering wheels in front of the monitor and discussing whatever new stuff is happening there. We would like to show you new stuff that's upcoming. We would like to cover the history. There's so many ideas floated around that we'll need to settle on some initial schedule, but there will be more of us on screen in the near future. So please stay loyal to us, and we'll be definitely loyal to you, and see you next time.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, everyone. We've talked about the past, the origins of American Truck Simulator. We've talked about the present, what's happening now, and we've talked about what we're looking forward to the future. We thank you very much for sticking us for American Truck Simulator for 3 years. And it's a great celebration. It's a big milestone, but there's so much more to come in the pipeline. So again, massive thank you to all of you for sticking around, for submitting your questions through the forums. It really helped shape what the stream was going to be today. So we thank you for your input. A massive thank you to all the guys behind the scenes, not only for setting up this brand new studio, but as well as getting it all together and getting it all running, and for running everything while they've been here, including the moderators as well. As you can, as you can tell, but as you can imagine, lots more streams to come in the future. Keep an eye on our blogs and our social media channels for all the latest announcements, including map expansions and all those sorts of good stuff. You'll find it all there online on our blogs and our Facebooks. From all of us here in the SCS studio and the offices here in Prague, have yourselves a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.